Rollo, do you want to take a wild guess on where I discovered you?
Oh gosh. It's funny. That's like my first question I ask people when they like if somebody comes up to me like at one of the clubs or something like that and like, "Oh man, you saved my life." I'm like, "First of all, what's your name?" And then second of all, "How did you find me?" So, no, I don't know what's how did you discover my
Okay, so it was on Fresh and Fit, but do you want to take a wild guess who the very first guest I saw on Fresh and Fit was?
uh, oh, me or
It was Andrew Tate,
Oh,
and then
really?
that's where I discovered you.
I know exactly the episode. Is the only episode I've ever done with Andrew, which was in like December of 2021, I think.
Yeah, that was a great fucking podcast. I watched that one. It was
Mm,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rollo, for listeners that are unfamiliar with who you are, like you're recognized as the godfather of the red pill, but can you take me back? Take me back to how this all eventuated.
Mhm. So I got to clarify one thing first. Like, I never call myself the Godfather of the Red Pill. Like that name was given to me by my old mentor, Pat Campbell, and I used to do a terrestrial radio show with him, and he was like the syndicated radio guy out of Oklahoma. And when I was on, like, I had a regular spot with him on Fridays, like Friday mornings, and he would always introduce me as the Godfather of the Red Pill, and it kind of
Yeah.
stuck. I started out in the forum days. So I've been doing this for about 23 years now.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
I kind of like people want to say like, where did you start? Well, I was a forum moderator right around 2002, 2004, um, on a forum that was called SOSWAV, and it's still up. It's still going today. It's called soswav.net, SOSUAVE.net. And it's still going today. I was a moderator from probably like a year or two after I joined, right up until about 2014 when things started taking off for the book and everything. And I was doing the blog, and I just didn't have time to be a moderator anymore. But so I started there, and it coincided with the same time that I was going to college and I was learning psychology, right? And so I was really fascinated by the seduction community at that time, which was Mystery and the guys from like the game, like Neil Strauss and those guys,
Mm.
and then Tyler, well, Owen Cook, who's a friend of mine now. And then it's funny because I just recently I met up for the first time with Mystery, and I'm like, God, why haven't I been working with this guy sooner? But just some really interesting people back then, and I noticed that a lot of what they were talking about and a lot of the discussions we were having on those forums were really interrelated with a lot of the stuff that I was learning in psychology at the time. And so I started relating a lot of that to behavioral psychology, which is what my specialization was. And because there wasn't really much of I mean, there was evolutionary psychology was a thing back then, but at the college I was going to, there was no program for it at that time. So I stuck to nuts and bolts behaviorism with a focus on personality studies. And I noticed that a lot of the stuff and a lot of the guys that I was working with in the psychology program at that time were experiencing a lot of the same problems that the guys that I was talking to on the forums were. And so as a result, I spent probably from 2002 till about 2011, 2012, somewhere around there, uh, on the forums and having these conversations on a daily basis. Because whenever I had downtime at work or whatever I was doing, like I was working in the gaming industry, and I was, it was brand management, and I was doing marketing, and I was doing advertising and art direction and graphic design and all that good stuff. But whenever I had downtime, I was always on the forums, and we are continuing these conversations just for a long, long time. And so over a course of almost 10 years, a lot of the principles that end up in the first book were things that we had discussed in the seduction communities and on SoSuave and on alt fast seduction and on Venusian arts and stuff like that, that I was a part of. And I was never part of the pickup artist community back then, but I had a fascination with it because it was like something I was writing about and something I was learning about at that time. And so what I did was I went from the forum years of having these back and forth conversations, and I became a reluctant blogger because a lot of people wanted me to sort of aggregate all of these principles on one blog, which is what I did. But I was
Mm.
more into having like the conversation so that because that's where the real work got done during those 10 or 12 years. And so I put The Rational Male together, the blog, The Rational Male, in 2011, and still up today, still going today. I haven't done much with it in a while, but because I kind of have moved on to other forms of media, right? So the blog days, I had the second most trafficked blog in what we now call the Manosphere. The first one was, of course, Royce in DC, which later became Heartiste.org. And and then there was the three R's of the Manosphere, or the Red Pill, which was Rollo, Roosh, and Royce. And those were like us three were the really kind of like the thought leaders during that time. And I would say that was probably right around 2010, right up until, well, I mean, I'm still going, but the other guys kind of fell off. But I would say probably right up to about 2016, 2017. And then things kind of shifted into different media. But I was doing the blog, and I started the blog in 2011, and then I published the first book in 2013. And it was the first time I ever even attempted to be an author, and I self-published, and it was the only way. It's the only way you're ever going to be able to release that kind of material. And I did it because I wanted to read the book that I wrote the book I wanted to read, basically. I'd read the Game back in 2005, and it was a good book, but it was just like more like entertainment. It wasn't
Mm.
really kind of nuts and bolts. It wasn't like a manual or like this is why this works kind of thing. And so what I did with the first book is I took like what I thought were the most important parts of what was becoming the red pill at that time. And by that, I mean like the praxeology of intersexual dynamics. And so a lot of the blog posts from my blog were from discussions that we'd had over the 10 years at the forums. And then from there, I took what I thought was the best blog posts and I turned them into chapters and sections in the first book. And I had to completely rewrite them because it was blog posts don't really translate very well into like a book format. So I had to go to each one of these things and sort of rebuild them. But by that time I knew what I was talking about. So put that together. And then I did the second book, which is Preventive Medicine. And then the third book, which is Positive Masculinity. I spent 3 years putting together the fourth book, which was about religion and the confluence of intersexual dynamics and religion, because I constantly got that question all the time. And then the last one, the most recent one, was the Player's Handbook, and I put that together because there was sort of a need to explain why these common phrases or these common understandings of like the red pill or game or pickup or intersexual dynamics, like if you just on the surface level, they sound kind of like schmaltzy, but there's actually fundamental psychology beneath all of that stuff. And so that was my attempt to explain why game works, but not like it wasn't a how-to, it was a why it works kind of book.
Mm.
And the next one, the last one I've got right now, which should be coming out probably the beginning of October, will be called Reignite. And it's to coincide with my program called Reignite, which is to help guys make all of this stuff like useful so that they can actually put it into practice. And I've taken what I think is the most crucial elements of my past work and made them sort of into one cohesive kind of thing that you can actually get an idea of how you might want to use it. And the reason why I started the book and I started my program Reignite is because I've been working with my partner Mike Sartain. I'm also the co-host on Access Vegas, and he's got a group called Men of Action, and most of the guys in his Men of Action group are um, they're between the ages of like say 21 and I mean some of them may be a little younger, but mostly between like 21 and maybe like 33 or 34.
Mm.
But every now and then there's a guy who's like 45 in there or like 50, and they're
Really?
coming out of a really bad relationship, or they're trying to rebuild themselves up, fight back from zero kind of thing. And so the guy that I work with in my program, his name is Joe Marin. We saw a need, and so we're like, let's make a group that caters to the needs of these guys who are in that demographic, who are basically come out of a bad relationship, or maybe they never got a relationship at all, but they're getting older and they just simply haven't got out of life what they wanted to because they lack, money, muscles, or game, or they just don't have the social skills to be where they want to be, or they're coming out of a really nasty divorce and they're kind of reintegrating themselves back into the sexual marketplace. And that's a really tough time for guys. So at least here in the United States, the number one demographic for male suicide is 45 to 65. And so that was our initial sort of demographic to reach out to. Now, you don't have to be 45, you can be 35 or 25 in the group if you want to. But that's what our intent was, to sort of build a community and build a tribe of guys who, if they have a specific need, like if there's something that, like, I don't know anything about game, I don't know anything about style, I don't know anything about fitness, I don't know anything about, I got to get my money back on point. All these things that sort of like make up all of the key areas of sort of male self-improvement. If I don't address it, or Joe doesn't address it, we have someone in the group, or we have like, that won't, for lack of a better term, instructors, but they're like guys that will come in to have speak, or we'll have them, we have a network. I have such a vast network built up over the last 20 some odd years that I'm like, why am I not like utilizing this for the benefit of these other guys? So we started this group about a year and 3 months ago. And so we've been building up, and we've been doing pretty good. And then I thought, you know what? It would be great if I wrote a book that was like a primer for these guys, so that they could understand how to take these, what have been formerly like separate ideas and separate concepts, and see how they sort of fit together.
Yeah.
And I hate to use the term synergy, but like how to work, like for instance, like when we talk about frame, everybody wants to know what's frame. They like, it's almost like it's ambiguous, and so I'm trying to make it a little bit more easier to understand, because like when we talk about a concept like burden of performance, that affects your frame. And so those are two separate concepts that if you put them together, they're easier to understand together than they are when they're separate concepts. And the same thing might go for like mental point of origin, which is something I introduced like back in like 2013, 2014, and like give people a better understanding of it, rather than this sort of Tony Robbins, think of yourself first kind of thing. That's not at all what I meant when I was, putting that together. And so I've redefined that. And how does that affect your frame? How does that affect your mindset, which is another kind of buzzword that everybody uses? And so I'm like, I'm not against the word mindset, but I would rather it be from a definition that everybody can sort of make useful for themselves. How does that work with mental point of origin? How does that affect your frame? How does that affect, these different, aspects? And so each one of those is sort of, by the end of the book, all of them sort of come together so that you can get a better idea of how they work independently, and then how they work in union with the other concepts. And so it's a pretty novel approach. I don't think anybody's ever done anything like that before, because we kind of stick to these, especially today, because everybody's commercialized whatever their brand of red pill is, and they kind of bastardize a lot of old ideas, and just simply because it sounds like a good phrase for a bumper sticker, rather than like understanding the principle itself. And so that's why I wrote the Reignite as a book. And you don't have to be in the program. I mean, hey, it'd be great if you joined as a result, but like it's a standalone book on top of everything else. So it's basically just trying to make the red pill as useful as I possibly can. But that's pretty much my come up story. There's a lot of other shit that came along the way too. But I went from the forum years to the blog years to social media / YouTube years, and podcasting, and authoring and everything else. It's just one step along the way. And I don't know where I'm making this up as I go along, because there's no school for this. You just kind of
no, there isn't. No.
Thing. So
no, there really isn't, Rollo. There's no roadmap. And you are too, Rollo. You are changing lives. We've seen these stats, especially men after divorce. If I remember correctly, they're 8 times more likely to kill themselves. And guys are really struggling, Rollo. So you're providing an amazing service for a lot of these men. But for listeners that are sort of unfamiliar, Rollo, and how many fucking pills are there? I think there's red pill, black pill, blue pill, purple pill.
There's only one for me. So
yeah. But how would you define red pill ideology?
Mm. Well, first of all, I wouldn't call it an ideology.
Okay.
The red pill is not a movement. It's not an ideology. It's not a religion. It's not a cult.
Mm.
It's not a movement. It's not a philosophy. Those are everything I mentioned. Those are systems of belief, right? Those
Right,
are,
right.
and in its purest, most idealistic form, the red pill is what I call praxeology, or what's known as a praxeology. And praxeology is pretty simple. It's just the study of human behavior, in that human behavior has a purpose to it. Like there's a latent purpose. Like this is why we do what we do. That's why it works really well with like evolutionary psychology and evolutionary biology, right? So a lot of people think it's if then sort of logic, like it's like sort of like retconning things. But the thing is even if it doesn't get everything right, it's a predictive framework that is reliable enough to consider other concepts, right? So when I talk about the red pill as a praxeology, I always try to maintain that no matter what show I'm on, because not enough too many people think that it's a political movement, or it's an ideological movement, or it's a movement at all. And really what it is it's unconcerned with, from my perspective anyway, it's the praxeology of intersexual dynamics, right? In that those dynamics are behaviors, and we perform them for some reason, right?
Mm.
So there's no morals attached to it. It's amoral, it's asocial, it's a-religious, it's a racial. It is what it is. It's just a standalone praxeological loose science, right? And we write everything in pencil, not in pen, right? So if something we get something wrong, or something else comes along that seems like it works better than the last thing, then we'll erase that part and we'll put in the new part. So that's just how the scientific process goes. But we live in the TikTok age, right? We live in the Instagram Reels age, where everybody's attention span is 45 seconds, and that's long. So so but everything's a clip, right? I mean, I do long form content, and technically Access Vegas is long form content as well. But everybody mines our videos or mines our stuff for clip. We do the same thing. I do the same thing too, right? They mine the long form, content for short form content. And the problem is you lose so much in the translation too. So that's why I always try to say, it's not about it being an ideology or a philosophy. But when we talk about, like you were mentioning before, like how many different kinds of pills are there? The fact that you're even asking that means that people want to turn it into an ideology, because it's
Yeah,
easier for them to fight against an ideology than it is to accept truths, like just fundamental factual truths. And I've said this on a million other podcasts, is you can't tell people facts and data and statistics without telling them how to feel about it, because if you don't, they will hate you for it,
that's so true.
or they will infer meaning where you're not inferring any meaning. You can't just, like, I try to say, if I have a mission statement, it is I have an obligation to objective truth, right? And so I'm just going to throw it out there, and I don't care if it hurts your feelings, or maybe it reinforces your thinking or your practices or whatever else. So when people ask me about, like, what about the black pill? What about MGTOW? What about MRAs? What about tradcons and the white pill and the God pill and the purple pill and the black pill and all this other stuff? And I keep telling them, I'm like, those are best practices. The red pill
Mm.
is, like, what they've done is they've taken the parts of the red pill that either agree, or in some cases maybe disagree with their ideological stance, and then they say, okay, here's the data that the red pill presents to us. We're going to take it and we're going to say, this is this is the best practice. This is how we should use this, right? And in some ways that's a good thing. But when you're commercializing things and everybody's a grifter, then, if it's going to build your brand, especially if that brand is something that's already sort of pre-established, especially when it's traditional conservatism, or it could be like you're fighting against it. It could be, the opposite of that too. Then you have a built-in audience that's either going to agree with you and go, yeah, one of us, right? Or else they're going to hate you for it, and now you're the enemy. So online right now, especially with, like, online influencers and brand, the brand of me, everybody's their own brand. It's very tribal. So it's like, is he part of my tribe or is he not part of my tribe? And unless you, like, make some sort of declaration, some public declaration, they're going to presume either you're with them or you're against them, because easier to think in those terms than it is to go, what's he really telling me? Like, well, let me parse this out, because they just don't have the time for it. People don't have the attention span for stuff like that. And so that's why, like, whenever I'm writing books, like I'm not dumbing down the books, but I'm trying to make them a little bit more digestible so that people can sort of like, glean the meaning of what I'm trying to put out there without me trying to be overly, cramming scientific, you know, jargon down their throats or something like that. But it's a praxeology, which is based on sort of factualism, like factual absolutism. Whereas like the people who want to turn it into a movement or a philosophy, or like, if you like the Andrew Tates of the world, or um, the Pearl Davises or whoever, it doesn't have to be them. It could be like, guys who are just saying, this is what we ought to do. Well, the red pill doesn't deal with ought. It doesn't deal with should. It just deals with what is. And then it leaves that up to, the ought and should and the best practices up to the person who's sort of like interpreting that data for themselves. And that's, in its purest form, that's what I think the red pill should remain to be, right? It's like, I don't know if you guys have a Chilton manuals over there in Australia, but they're like manuals for cars, right?
Yeah.
And then the old days are like, big thick book. And it was basically every part in every car and how all those parts come apart and how they go back together.
Yeah.
Really, that's what the red pill is. It's like the Chilton manual of intersexual dynamics. Now, do we have all the parts and do we have all the procedures? No, but we have enough that we could probably figure out the rest on our own, kind of thing. And so, we run into problems with people who are like, even evolutionary psychologists are, they're purists and everything. They don't want us taking their data and bastardizing it. So what do they have to do? They have to turn it into a philosophy. Or if I'm talking about red pill truths about intersexual dynamics, about like men's nature and women's nature, and you happen to be Orthodox Christian, or you happen to be a really dyed in the wool, Muslim or something like that. There's parts of the red pill, the data sets are going to agree with a lot of what your belief sets are, but then there's parts that don't.
Yeah.
Those are the parts that everybody's going to fight against, or like say, well, everything's true except for this part. It's like pick and pull, like everything's true except for this part over here. And the reason why they do that is because it's easier to fight a belief with another belief than it is to fight empirical data with a belief, right? So, because I'm just putting it out there, like the sky is blue. Okay, well, if your religion says the sky is, green, then we're not going to have a conversation. We're going to end up talking past each other because we just don't share a common language. So what turning the red pill into a belief set really kind of entails is people trying to make it into something that they can fight. And they can't do that. But if you say, well, it's just data, like you choose to look at it how you want to. And so that's why everybody goes, what's this red pill movement? And because it sounds better on Pierce Morgan, right? It sounds better on Dr. Phil. It sounds better on Megyn Kelly, right? It sounds better on these, to Joe Rogan if it's a movement or something like that. And it's really not a movement. Mm-hmm. If it's not a movement, if it's not like something sexy, like the latest, death cult or sex cult or something like that, if I just say it's just data, they're like, wait, you're next, give me the next guest. It's boring at that point. It's not sexy to them. So,
yeah, Rollo, you do get a lot of criticism and pushback from mainstream media and in parts of the manosphere. But what's some of the misunderstanding about your work? Like, how do you respond to that?
It's usually whenever somebody like bastardizes my work, or they make presumptions. More than anything else, people make presumptions. They say, "Aren't you the guy that said?" No, like, where are you getting this? Or I'll get lumped in. Like, a lot of people want to use, like, they'll use the red pill as sort of this boogeyman to hate, right? And like I've always said, if there is no boogeyman, nobody gets paid. And that's really what they're doing, is they're just brand building off of like punching the biggest prisoner on the prison yard when they first get to prison, right? Like, I got to punch the big guy first so everybody will respect you in the prison yard. So that's usually what it amounts to, is like they come at me, hey, let's beat up Rollo because he's the biggest name in the. And usually it comes from a place of ignorance, and I call it a confident ignorance, because so confident that I said this, or they're so confident that this is what it's about, and and all I have to do is say, well, have you read The Rational Male? No, but I know what's no, you don't. Like I can't have a conversation. We have no frame of reference if you haven't read my work. Well, didn't you say such and such on this day and this day and this right here in this clip? And I'm like, yeah, on that 45-second TikTok clip that I didn't even clip, somebody else did, you know? And it's like, yeah, if you take that out of context, but would you like to know why I said what I said? No, you're a bad man. You know, it's usually, like I was saying before, like when people want to turn things into a belief set versus, you know, the empirical side of things, it's not trying to find out what's true and what's false. It's about what's good and what's bad, right?
Mm.
Are you a liar or are you telling the truth, right? Are you a good guy or are you a bad guy? Are you on our tribe? Are you in our tribe or are you in those guys, the other people's tribe? Like it's just team sports at that point. And so usually I kind of have to, I take things with a grain of salt. You know, people go, come on, debate me, Rollo. I'm like, I don't owe anybody a debate. And first of all, if you want to debate, I'm going to ask you to like give me a list of topics so we can debate those topics. And then on top of that, I'm going to say we're going to do it in a classical format and not like modern debate or postmodern debate or like you're an asshole. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You know, that's the Pierce Morgan format for debate, which is just, you know, crosstalk and yelling at each other. And that's what, yeah. and then whoever won is whoever shouted the loudest, and they have the most followers that go, he got destroyed. And it's like, that's all it is just this team sports. So
Yeah.
I've been doing this for so long, and I mean, I used to care. I used to be, I used to take things a lot more personally than I do, but usually it comes from a position of ignorance. And I don't mean like stupidity. There's a difference between being stupid and being ignorant, right? You could be very intelligent and just be ignorant of what you're talking about because you're making presumptions, right? Doesn't mean you don't have the like stupidity. It's just you don't have the brains, you don't have the mechanics, you don't have the gears to make it happen. But there's a lot of smart people who are just ignorant of certain I'm ignorant of certain topics, right? There's things that I don't know about, you know, stuff, but it's not like I can't go, I have the curiosity, intellectual curiosity to go find out. But that's the problem though. You can't build a brand you can build a great brand off of making, jumping to conclusions and making presumptions. Just Candace Owens, great example of that. but it's those presumptions. Well, again, those are sexy, right? That even if you're wrong, completely wrong, you don't have to put a retraction out. You just cover it up with the next most outrageous thing you can possibly say. And I forget who said this, but I'm paraphrasing. I forget who the quote was by, but it wasn't me. But it's like the effort and, you know, energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude greater than it is to create bullshit. And so the thing is like when people are creating, it's easy to create bullshit. And so I go and say, no, wait, let me tell you what I actually meant. And like, so if all I did was that, I would be doing this 24. I would never sleep. You know, there's always some new guy who wants to sort of misquote me, or they've never read the book, or they want to make presumptions. And really all they're doing is just doing it as a form of brand building. And so I have to sort of, you know, separate the wheat from the chaff, because usually, like, sometimes there are certain people who are critical of something I said that I go, I hadn't thought about that way. Like, I'm open to criticism. If you think I'm an asshole, yeah, I'll be your asshole. But if you think I'm wrong about something, if you think, oh, this is not necessarily true, and let me tell you why, and it's a well thought out, cogent counter argument to something I've said, but then I'm going to go and I'll make a response to that, or then I'll go and pick that. Like Mike Sartain will do that too. Like Mike's in the honeymoon period right now. He's where I was probably about like 6 or 7 years ago. Where it's like, he just blows people off unless they say the moon landing never happened. A flat earther or something like that. For whatever reason, that just like gets its hooks in him, and he can't help but respond to stuff like that. But there's other topics too, where especially if it's like something that is like if somebody comes up with a cogent argument, then he and I are like we're right on point. We'll do a whole special show just to talk about that stuff. We've done that before. We've had people who I forget, it was Mooncat. Mooncat came at just the evolutionary psychology in general. and nobody was defending. And like me and Mike are like, how come none of these guys who are like, they've got DR in front of their names, there's doctors, literal doctors, aren't responding to this? And so we're like, okay, looks like it's up to us. So we go into, of course, we do like a 2-hour, 3-hour, refutation video of every point that she goes into, and nobody else does. And it was really satisfying for us. But nobody watches those shows. No one cares. But we did. At least we can say we made an effort, and nobody else did, but we did. So felt good to us. It was only important to us.
Yeah. There's an alarming stat, Rollo, and I'm sure it's probably changed. It's probably a lot worse now, but we're in the highest rates of sexlessness ever amongst young people. This is what I read. 1 in 3 men between the ages of 18 and 30 hasn't had sex in the past year.
Yep.
What societal factors do you think are driving this, and how does this connect with rising levels of loneliness and mental health issues?
I think a lot of it has to do with the isolation that the internet has put out there. I mean, I don't think this is any great revelation. I really wish we could get away from this idea that, oh, these guys are just listless and lazy and they don't like, because I will tell you, like you were just asking me a minute ago about like, what do you do about these haters and people come at you? So I don't look at like Gen Z, especially males, like Gen Z guys. I don't see them as necessarily like overly lethargic, because when they hate me, they will make it their life's mission to come after me, right? To give me they will write code to send like spam bots at me. Like that's the level of intensity of they're just not motivated. They're just not incentivized by it enough. But really what it comes down to is that incentive, right? When you talk to the guys who are like sort of these MGTOW guys, or the guys who are like, for lack of a better term, black pill, nihilistic kind of guys who just the juice isn't worth the squeeze kind of guys. They're dropping out because they don't see any incentive. They don't see an upside to any of it.
Yeah.
And so like, I love it when I get into conversations with guys who are like looks maxers, right? It's all about looks, man. You got to have a good jawline and you got to have, V taper and everything. And I'm like, I agree. You're right. Remember what I said about like the red pill? The red pill will tell you the same thing. Women like a guy with a V taper, 6-pack abs. You got to have like 18-inch guns at least. You got to have good shoulders and everything. You got to be in shape. And yes, a jawline is definitely a cue for high testosterone and a low voice. And there's all this other stuff. But that's the data. So for me, like, that's great, man. I'm going to get in the gym and maximize my, I'm going to go and do, build my lats out. So I have a V taper and I'm 57 years old and I look better than 90% of the guys I see in there who are like, late 20s or 30s. Right.
Yeah. You look good, Rollo.
And so, but that's by design, right? I'm going to maximize what I've got as best I can. Now, am I going to have the kind of pull that like Justin Waller's? Probably not, but at least I can put myself at the most advantageous position where I can leverage all of that. And I'm looking at these guys, but see, their best practice is give up. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So we should just all forget about it, right? We should just, just go our own way. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. Or if they're looks maxers, then it's like, well, it only matters that they just want to sit and complain about it. I'm like, you guys are looks maxers. You should be personal trainers is what you should be. You should be in the gym 24/7, or they have like the jawser size thing. I just bite on that like rubber ball or whatever. And it just really doesn't do anything. It just makes your cheek muscles like expand. But like that guy, whoever created that, that's the kind of like ingenuity that those guys need to have, right? But again, it comes down to best practices. And so it's the same thing with people attacking me, or the same thing with sometimes an attack is just, I don't want to do anything. It's easier not to do something than it is to actually pick up and do something and have some sort of motivation. Somebody needs to kick you in the ass. So you sometimes you'll see guys like Jocko Willink or David Goggins, or maybe even Ty Lopez a little bit. There's some other like influencers that who I'm friends with, who I think are really great. Mm. But their whole shtick is just, come on, man, fucking get out there and do it, or Wes Watson. Well, I say what you want to about Wes. Like, I kind of get him. I understand his delivery as sort of like a professional wrestler kind of delivery, but his solution to everything is like, stop being a little bitch. Right? But he makes millions of dollars off of stop being a little bitch, because guys need that, because guys go, yeah, I shouldn't be a little bitch anymore. Right here, take my money. I'm going to go to the next seminar. I'm going to buy your book. I'm going to whatever. I mean, what he's selling, right? I'm going to join your Discord server, whatever it is. And it's the same, a lot of the times, guys will come up with classes. Guys will have their own I have Reignite. Mike has MOA, Men of Action, right? Get up off your ass and do something. Come out to an immersion. Come out to Vegas. Come out and learn how to, approach women. Come out and do things like guys who are sort of in the black pill doomer phase of things. They look at like what Mike's doing and they think he's just a hustler. He's just like filching money out of their wallets or something like that. And if you go to any of these immersions and you talk to these guys, it's absolutely the furthest thing that's happening. And, people look at me and they'll go like, oh, Rollo's trying to convince all these old guys that they can fuck 25-year-old girls. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But it has happened with some of my guys, right? And if you don't believe me, then please talk to them, because they'll be happy to tell you. But that's not the point of my group. My point of my group is to keep the noose off of guys' necks and the guns out of their mouths, right? But as a byproduct of that, they live better lives and they took action and they were sort of rebuilding themselves from nothing. And I'm like, how come these guys who are like 45, 50 years old can do this, but you're 25 and you have all these advantages of youth and everything else, and you're bed rotting, right? You're just going to sit in your bed and not do anything, doom scroll the whole time. But it's not even that. Like, they're motivated, they're incentivized, but they're incentivized to hate you. They're incentivized to get to shit post on Twitter. They're incentivized to go on whatever forums they're on, or like Blue Sky, or on, the whatever Discord servers or Reddit or whatever. And they're happy to sit there and commiserate. They'll do that to an obsessive compulsive degree, but what they won't do is they won't take action to like sort of improve themselves in any way. And I think what's funny is if they gave it half a shot, they would find that they actually do improve, and they might be, God forbid, they might actually think that it's actually worthwhile. So you got this demographic of guys, especially in Gen Z right now, maybe the latter half of the millennials, who just have given up because they just don't see they don't have an incentive, and they don't see, like, it's like return on investment, right? It's a pragmatic choice, really. Why would I do that? Why would I want to go and do like, and so you get then you get the Ben Shapiro's and the Matt Walsh and the Charlie Kirks, right? Who will say like, well, men need to man up and they take more responsibility and they need to, get to college and they need to get a job and they need to get in. That's why they loved Andrew Tate until he, crashed out. But, because he was speaking that language. He was speaking the TradCon language, which was more responsibility, but we never talk about authority, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is like just the mathematics of it don't work out for these guys, because they don't see, like, it's easier to create reasons not to go out and do shit than it is to actually pick up and go and do, like, try to improve your situation, right? Go out and actually make an effort to look better, to get to the gym. My first thing I always tell guys is go to the gym, because 75, I don't know how it is in Australia, but 75% of the population in the United States is overweight.
Yeah, we're right up there too, Rollo, in Australia.
And 30% of them, or 35% of them, are like obese, morbidly obese. So I think I'm starting from a pretty good position, saying go to the gym, because that will be the catalyst for a lot of other changes in your life. Because when we talk about money, muscles, and game, right? Like, those are all, again, synergistic, right? So if you get into better shape and people start treating you differently, how is that going to affect your game? And if that's the case, then how's your improvement in game going to help with you with your finances and getting a job and being more motivated to go and like start a business or something like that? And so it's like all these things, like, money, muscles, and game, all play off of each other. And if you put them into a positive feedback loop, then you'll suddenly find out that you're living a better life. If you put those into a negative feedback loop, you're going to end up bed rotting and doom scrolling all day and coming up with reasons with your friends in the forums as to why the juice isn't worth the squeeze and nobody should be bothering with anything, right? And then they wonder why. Then, of course, what does that do? That creates other statistics like the fertility crisis, or that which, by the way, has been going on since the mid 70s. But then what was that? Here's another stat. At least in the United States, is like, was it 67% of men between 18 and 29 are like they identify as single. right? 67%.
Shit.
Yeah. And then there's like 34% of women identify as single. So
Wow.
a majority of women are attached or like are in a relationship at least of that same cohort, 18 to 29, right? So either so either the women are fucking the same guy in that cohort or they're dating older. They're
Yep.
dating outside the 30 up range, right? Because it cuts off at 29. And so guys in that age cohort are getting outplayed by guys who are older than they are. And of course they hate on me for saying that guys can go, like older men can go and pick up younger women. I'm like, well, here's the stats. Again, I'm presenting the facts to you. How you decide to interpret those facts is up to you. And how they interpret that is we just give up. These guys, who wants one of these ran through skanks anyways? And they'll just make up cope after cope after cope as to why they shouldn't take action. I said, well, you're going to get outplayed by the old generation, like the millennials and Gen X, for Christ's sake, right? But there's a reason for that. Women want a guy who has, like, at least to be in a relationship with, they want a guy who has money, muscles, and game. They want a guy who is more a made man, right? They want a guy who is at least on his way to maximizing his like personal potential. And those guys happen to be outside of that age cohort. And so that's why the women who are in Gen X or Gen Z women get with millennials and they get with Gen X guys, right? That's pretty much the long and the short of it.
Yeah.
Those guys are just left with their dicks in their hands, and they're just, what do? They go on to they play Fortnite, right? Or they jerk off to Pornhub, or
Yeah.
they're smoking weed, or they find ways to sedate themselves. And that's like in my upcoming sixth book, I go into in great detail. There's a whole dedicated section to how young men sedate themselves.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that word sedation, Rollo. And we can look throughout history that non-partnered childless men in society tends to be the most unstable. Men who don't have a reason to behave will commit violent crimes, have a lack of purpose, and be unable to contribute meaningfully to society. And I heard famous podcaster Chris Williamson speak of this. He talks about the male sedation hypothesis. He thinks that the reason why you're not seeing a sudden rise in violence and just total anarchy is because guys are sedating themselves. They're watching porn. They're playing video games. What do you think of that? Do you think there's some truth to that?
I think Chris has been listening to me a little too closely.
Okay.
I think lifting my material. No, I've talked about sedation for going on 5 or 6 years now, and I started picking up on this when I was working with Pat Campbell back in the day.
Yeah.
And because we were sort of analyzing like school shooters, like young men and stuff, like why are they doing this, and like why are they acting out, or why aren't there more? Right? Why isn't this happening more often? There's people who asked me on several occasions about like what is it? There's hormonal birth control for women. Why isn't there hormonal birth control for men? Right? Those kinds of questions. Or why isn't there, like, if you read the stuff by what is it? Pinkerson, or no, Steven Pinker, Dr. Steven Pinker, when he talks about how we actually live in a much more peaceful society than we have in any other time in human history. It seems like we're war torn right now. But the thing is statistically speaking, from a historical perspective, we live in much more peaceful times than has ever been in human history. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've found more efficient ways to sedate, well, certainly sedate the people in general. I mean, women sedate themselves too, but like particularly men today, because men are easier to sedate, I think, especially when it comes to like sexuality. Because when you look at the inherent, like, evolved sexual strategies or mating strategies of men and women, it's hypergamy, which I'm sure you've heard before. But for like, people don't ask me about, well, what's men's, and what it is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And there's one thing that provides that in a virtual sense, and that's porn. And so when you look at any new, I'm sure Chris will steal this at some point. Any new technology, especially media technology, any technology that can facilitate the human sexual experience will explode much more rapidly than any other technology. You want to know why Twitter is so, like, Twitter is still around and Tumblr is not? Because Tumblr banned hardcore pornography and Twitter did not. If anything that facilitates the human sexual response, especially the male sexual response, that technology will grow much faster. You want to know why? Like, was it a VHS beat out beta it's because there's more porn on VHS. Same thing with magazines. Same thing with photography. Same thing with even like the classic. Here's my bachelor's of fine arts coming back into play. Even like Renaissance, the great masters of the painters of the time during the high Renaissance, they were basically painting porn, so very rich aristocratic noblemen could stroke off, right? I mean, more or less. Same thing with but it was to such a degree that we got it so realistic, like it was photorealistic, or you have the David, or you have like the sculpture of Greco-Roman sculptures and stuff like that. Any new technology will be taken to the logical extreme if that new technology, whether it's art or it's media or it's could be tech like the internet, will be taken to its logical extreme if it can facilitate the human sexual experience, right? And so think about this. When I was Gen X, I'm going to get a little graphic here. When I was Gen X, if you could find a Playboy magazine or a Penthouse or a Hustler, God forbid you could find something even more hardcore than that, you would, like, as a teenage boy, you would hang on to that like pirate's gold. Like that was something that you could like trade that for drugs. You could trade that for like personal favors and stuff like that. And then, but like today, like, do they even have magazines anymore? I don't know. But that kind of faded away to video, and then video faded away to the internet, and then it was just pictures, and then it became, quick little GIFs, and then it became streaming video to where we're at right now. And there's a reason why we have like pornography today is free. The only thing people pay for is OnlyFans, and that's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
But but if you want, like, anybody with any 10-year-old kid with a cell phone can get free streaming 4K porn anytime they want to. And
That's
like
crazy.
I can't even, like, I can remember trying to get Spice Channel and like the little wave, trying to crack I will turn into a cable technician so I can figure out how to defeat that, the bypass, right? You'll get creative. You like learn a new skill trying to figure out how to satisfy the sexual need, right? And so that's the same thing. That's really what I think is one of the reasons why we have such sedations. When it comes to pornography, pornography is easy. That's only one sedation. There's many other ones. Like, Chris Williams is going to go for the sexy, easy ones to like throw out there and that are really salacious. But then there's like marijuana or prescription opioids, or maybe you're an alcoholic. The drugs are easy too, because like people get hooked on drugs, right? That's their cope, that's their crutch. Okay, what does it do? It's a sedation. You don't get out of bed and go, you know what, I'm going to go to Reignite or Men of Action or whatever, but as soon as I sleep off this hangover. Like, it's a sedation. Anything that keeps you from progressing and moving forward and advancing yourself and growing as a human being is really sedation. For women, it might be being addicted to The Bachelor, or it could be Instagram, or it might be OnlyFans, or it might be something else. Like, usually it's something that's like social media and all that it's attention. There's an attention economy. If it's an attention technology, usually that's what's sedation for women. But for guys, it could be a lot of things. It can also be a mindset too. So like we were just talking about, like these doomers and the nihilistic kind of guys. It's what's holding them back. What their sedation is that, oh, it's never going to work for me. Oh, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Why would I ever want to do something like that? That mentality, that's the sedation. That keeps them from action. That keeps them from doing what it is they need to do to grow and progress. Right. And like I was saying, I know it sounds funny, but like guys will become like cable technicians because they want to defeat the porn, filters on the cable box. But you know what happens while you're doing that? You were motivated by sex, but now you've got some technical skills that you didn't know you had along the way, and maybe that transfers into something else, maybe something that comes along as a result of that. But what motivated you was the sexual response. Now, if there was if there was streaming 4K porn back in the mid 80s or the early 90s, nobody would ever try to be a technician for a cable, right? Because why would I do that? I got it right here. Why would I do anything when I've got video games, I've got Uber Eats, I've got weed down at the dispensary, and my mindset is such that like I'm not going to try anything. I don't have to. I just do enough to live. I hate my job, fuck my shitty life, but I do enough so I can go home and I can play, League of Legends. I go home, I only work because I have to keep the lights on, I have to keep the internet on, and I have to keep the porn coming, and I have to keep the food coming, and I have to keep the electricity going for the computer, right?
Yeah.
So there's never any motivation to do much else. And so I can totally I can't disagree with women when they go, men don't have any motivation now, or men ain't shit, right? And, yeah, for your generation, I'm sure they're not. But primarily it's because they can't get out of bed in the morning. And like I said, it doesn't have to be porn. It can be video games. It can be anything that's immersive, anything that's an escape. Like if your life is, you live a shitty life, your escape life becomes better than your shitty life. And so anytime you're going to live in your escape life, or you want to live more in your escape life than you do in your real life, that's when it becomes a sedation.
Yeah. Rollo, the case of Elliot Rogers was a fucking tragedy. And I think that, he was very young, and I think that if he kind of knew some of this information, if he had sort of access to that, he's going to be more sexually attractive and appealing to women as he gets older. A lot of guys are a little bit like this. Obviously, they're not going to commit heinous crimes like he did, but I think there is a lot of good with what you're doing with creating this space for men to sort of understand what's really happening in the world. Do you think there still needs to be a lot more education?
Oh yeah, I mean that's my whole point is I have this is in the introduction of like pretty much all of my books, where it's like I will say like I am not in the business of making men better men. I'm in the business of equipping and educating men so that they can be better men. They can use those tools to build a better life for themselves, right? So I don't want a cult. I don't want I don't want people. I'm a Tomassi man. I'm a rational man. I don't please don't wipe that on me. Please. Because it's not about 12 rules for life. It's not about 7 tips to get the hot chick in bed. It's how to change your life. It's how to use these. It starts as how do I get my dick wet, right? But then from that point on, it's like, well, it's much better to actually have an authentic value than it is to fake that value, until such time as you can't fake it anymore. Right. So how do I do that? Well, okay, then now we can start talking about some sort of some deeper red pill principles, because that's really where the red pill was derived from, was from the pickup artist community. It came from the seduction community. And like nobody was like, I love it when people go, Rollo, the red pill just started, back in 2019, you know what you're talking about. And I literally will go back and get the screenshots of me using the term red pill from 2004.
Wow.
On So Suave, and I go like, I feel, and here it is. Like most of these guys weren't even alive back then, or if they were watching Nickelodeon or Playhouse Disney. They were just not around to know that. Again, it's like that ignorant, that confident ignorance. But as far as like equipping guys and educating guys, yes, there is. But there's also, you have to remember that there's like whenever you bring up, everybody wants to always bring up Elliot Roger. And that happened in May of 2014. So that was 11 years ago. And we're still, people still use that as if it was the worst thing. And this is this is what can happen. And I'm like, well, we got one guy to our name in 11 years. Well, actually, that's a pretty good track record, I think. How many guys' lives have been saved as a result of that? How many people didn't, commit suicide? How many people, had like I've got this one essay, one post on my blog, and it's called the safety net, right? And It was a like the comment section on it was basically these guys saying what the red pill had done for them. And I would say about 80 or 90% of these guys were going to commit suicide, or they had a date planned to commit suicide and they canceled that date. And I've had guys come up to me at events and places I've been speaking at, and they'd be just tearful and they'd be like, my kids have a father now because I found your work. Right. So I think that that's pretty positive, but we're still going to focus on Elliot Rodger, right? We're still going to talk about that one kid. And the other, and I'll be happy to talk about it. I wrote about it the day that that happened. I actually wrote
Yes.
an essay
Yeah.
that happened. And, and I think that there are some guys that are just whack, that they're going to get this material, and rather than use it as an educational tool, they're going to use it to reinforce their pre-existing conditions, right? And I think that's really what happened with Elliot Rodger. Is in all likelihood he probably tried some of his seduction techniques and all this other stuff. That's why these guys, he was part of a forum called Pickup Artist Hate or something like that, and then it was Slut Hate after that. But they really hated on the pickup artist community. They would they would call women Stacy's and guys Chad. That's where we get Chad from. That's where we get Chad Thundercock. That's where we get that euphemism from, is from those guys. And they used to be the forever alones, right? And then they sort of graduated into the incels. And those are the guys. Some of the guys are going to take this material and they're going to use it to reinforce whatever their personality disorder happens to be, right? And those, like, you're going to get those guys. And I'm always like, and I know Mike is the same way. We're always looking for guys who are sort of in that cluster B sort of autism spectrum, spectrum, right? And so you have to keep an eye out for that, because I can remember having a conversation with Dr. Sean Smith one time, and it was just when he was becoming a little bit more familiar with the red pill and what I was doing. This was at like back in 2017, 2018, and I think it was at the 21 convention. And he says, Rollo, do you think that these guys are ready for this material? And I go, it doesn't matter whether I think that they're ready or not. The genie's out of the bottle. The best I can do is give it to them in as honest a way and as measured a way as I can. But if they're not getting it from me, they're going to get it from Andrew Tate. They're going to get it from somebody else, right? And how they take that and how they use that data and that education and that equipment is kind of up to the individual. No, I agreed with him. I said, no, a lot of these guys aren't ready to be unplugged, right? They're not going to take it well. A lot of guys hate it, because they'll tell me, I can't go back. I can't unsee this stuff. Once you put the red pill lens on, the glasses don't come off. And so I love it when people, like, when we talk about the purple pill, right? The purple pill is when guys like become red pilled, but they still believe in their blue pill ideals. Like, I can use the red pill to achieve all of these goals and this magic that I knew was possible in my old blue pill way of thinking. And so it becomes this, red and blue, right? This purple pill that goes together. And the problem is that they have trouble letting go of those blue pill ideals, because once you get more into the red pill and once you like understand human nature and women's nature, men's nature, and the confluence between the two and intersexual dynamics and everything else, it can be I totally understand. It can be very depressing. It's what I call the abyss, right? It's the anger phase of unplugging. And a lot of guys get trapped in that because they don't see any way forward. They don't either have the patience, or they don't have the creativity, or they think they're fucked, right? They think they're going to, like, I don't have a jawline. I'm 50 pounds overweight. I'm a chin cell, whatever the cope that they come up with, and they get stuck in what I call the abyss. You have to cross the abyss at some point. You have to like go from sort of your blue pill way of like conditioned way of thinking over into like a red pill paradigm. And a lot of guys can't do that because they don't know what to do once they get into that. They're cut off. Like all the things that we thought were going to be, like all the pretty lies that they were sold in the blue pill, and the way that they were brought up and pop culture taught them, and maybe their religion taught them, or their mom and dad taught them, or whatever else that they thought, all those romantic ideals that they thought were possible, suddenly they're gone. And it's like, why do I have any reason to do anything anymore? Well, you do, because now you have accurate information, and you have the good news is that you can build a better life with the accurate information of the red pill. It's just they just don't know how to use it. They don't know how to utilize it. And so a lot of these guys, or some of the more, well, most guys cross the abyss. Most guys get out of the anger phase, but some guys like Elliot Rogers get stuck there, and they have one choice, and that's to flame out. They put a gun in their mouth, and they can't accept it anymore, and that's their only way out. And that's
Yeah.
and I would, if I could have, like, a lot of time, like when I wrote the essay after that happened, I was like, I probably could have saved this kid. I probably could have helped him out if he would have just like reached out,
Yeah.
or at the very least, I could have like put him on a different path, right? But sometimes, not every young man, hell, even old man, young man is going to be able to understand and accept this kind of stuff, right? And it's the same thing like when we were talking about male suicide, when you got guys who are coming out of a marriage, right? What was it? Eight times more likely to take
Yeah.
lives. Well, the reason is because everything that they thought was they were doing the right thing, right? Well, what is that? Well, it's go to high school, get a diploma, go get a college degree, go get a career, get a wife, have 2.5 kids, get a golden retriever in the front yard and a white picket fence and everything else, and you do all this stuff, and then before the woman's 40, she divorces you for her jiu-jitsu instructor, right? And so now, and then she takes half of your stuff, and she takes half of your business, and all of the investment and everything that you put into that marriage and that relationship is now for nothing. And the older the guy gets, the more likely it is that he's going to take his own life, because
Yeah.
they're faced with two choices: rebuild themselves or delete themselves. And sadly, too many guys delete themselves. They talk about deaths of despair. Well, the despair actually comes from the fact that they did everything that anyone ever told them was the right thing to do, and they got fucked for it. And I'm not saying that that always happens that way, but if you want to know why that despondency is there for an Elliot Rogers and for a guy who might be 50 years old and facing down the barrel of a nasty divorce and doesn't know what to do with himself, that's why I started Reignite, so I can be there when those guys get out of divorce court and say, "Don't give me that gun. Don't do this. Come with us. We're gonna reintegrate you back into society." Right? It's like you've been in jail for 25 years, and now this is the jail. This is the prisoner reintegration program, and we're going to help you, like, get yourself back on track. The older a guy gets, and the less he has at the end of that, the more likely he is to off himself.
Yeah.
And so, but the converse is true as well. If you have a kid that has nothing going for them, or feels like he has nothing going for him, the feeling is the same. So if they get to the point where they're going, I'm never going to have this white picket fence. I'm never going to have this hot girl. I'm never, even not just the hot girl. I'm not going to have any girl. I'm never going to have any wife. I'm never going to have any kind of happiness. I'm never going to have any kind of, I'm never going to have children. I'm never going to have a dog, whatever, all that stuff. It's really hard for a lot of guys who've been sold on this bill of goods. And then they get to the point where they realize it's not going to be what they think it's going to be. It's the same effect as if they were married and they came out and they lost everything. It's just pre-investment and post-investment. That's all it boils down to.
Yeah. Rollo, I heard you and Mike talk on Fresh and Fit, and I didn't even know that lesbian couples have the highest rates of divorce. And if you compare homosexual couples to lesbian couples to heterosexual couples, heterosexual is sort of moderate. Gay couples have the lowest rates of divorce. But what have you come to learn about the rising divorce rates in amongst the sexes?
My best source on that is divorce attorney Jim Sexton.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He's actually the go-to guy when it comes to statistics and stuff. You want to talk about a guy who knows he's a consummate statistician. He knows all the numbers, and it was like watching it was like watching a surgeon work when he went on with Matt Walsh and talked about the divorce industry, the marriage and divorce industry, and what's funny is because he put it in a really human way, because he was like, I believe in love. All these guys, men tend to remarry more than women, right? And even when the divorce rate is higher, like you get what is it, 67% of second divorces or second marriages end up in divorce, and 75% of third marriages end up in divorce. And so like those are some pretty, sobering statistics, right? But now the reason why we bring that up is because the common denominator is women, right? So the first thing, like you've probably heard the stat that it's 70%, at least in the United States, 70% of divorces are initiated by women. That's at
Yes.
70%. I don't know what the current numbers are. And so what does anybody say? Well, it's because men are assholes. And if they weren't assholes, then women wouldn't have to divorce them. Right. And then we go, okay, well, let's look at lesbians. So there's 2 women in the marriage and they still are the highest divorce rate because there's 2 women involved in this. And then you go and you look at the homosexual, like gay men, right? Which, by the way, is much lower instance of marriage. I'm just going to point out that the numbers are, like in aggregate are lower. But the fact of the matter is I think it's like 13% divorce rate for gay men. And because there's no woman involved. And so when you look at like gay men, you look at heterosexual couples and you look at like lesbian couples, the common denominator is the woman that's involved in it. And so that kind of puts a damper on this idea that it's because it's men's fault, because if men were better, then women wouldn't have to divorce them all the time. And so that's why we quote that. It's funny to quote on Fresh and Fit. It's funny to put on Access Vegas because it shuts everybody. Women get destroyed on divorce, right? But what I always point out is that what's more, I think, interesting about divorce statistics is marriage statistics as compared to divorce statistics. So if you look at the average age of first marriage in the United States, for women, it's 30 years old, and for men, it's 32. Now that's up. So it used to be much younger than that, even just as far back as the 80s, right? But we'll use those as the round numbers for right now. I've done essays on this. I've done the research on this, like over the course of really since like about 2012. And my thought was this: like everybody keeps saying that frivolous divorce, meaning that 70% of divorces are initiated by women. Frivolous divorces are initiated by women, and how it's so overblown in the red pill, right? It's because men are assholes. If men were better, if men didn't, women don't want to divorce their husbands because they'll do worse off financially, and all this other like easily disprovable nonsense. But that's not what my point was. My point was, okay, well, is there a pattern to this? So if the average age of first marriage is, let's say, 30 years old, what's the average age of first divorce? Well, that happens to be anywhere between 5 to 9 years is the average duration of a marriage before divorce occurs. That's why they call it the 7 years itch, because it's 7 is the mean average between 5 and 9, right? So let's just say, for sake of averages, it's 7 years. So that woman marries at 30, she divorces at 37. Okay, that's just this side of 40. And she can start, saying, you know what, this guy's not who I wanted to be with. I've got my 2 kids. I'm going to get out. Right? That's is there an incentive for women to divorce that is not there for men? That's the real question when it comes to like women initiate 70% of divorces. Is there a financial, personal, or sociological, prompting? Is there an incentive for women to do that, to initiate divorce so they can get out, and then maybe at 30, 38 or whatever, then they play cougar for a couple of years, and then by the time they hit 40, they try to remarry or whatever. It's like the Eat, Pray, Love narrative, or the Stella got her groove back, or whatever it is. She's going to find somebody. I'll find somebody. I'll find true love, right? Or the one that got away. I'll try to rekindle an old relationship from when I was in college, kind of thing. And so it's a divorce. It's what we call divorce porn, right? It's this divorce fantasy that and like, by the way, it's sold in romance novels, it's sold in movies, it's sold in romantic comedies, it's sold in sitcoms, it's sold in your favorite Netflix series, that you're going to be just fine, girl, divorce him, and you're going to find the one that you should have been with and live happily ever after. And the reason why you're unhappy is because you married the wrong guy. He's the wrong dude. He's not your one, right? So I got thinking about that, and I go, is there a consistent pattern? Is there a correlation for all of this? And so I started looking at this, and one of my old friends, Dalrock, who is more of a religious blogger, he was looking into it as well. And so he and I both went back through like from the 60s all the way up to like the mid like 20 teens, right? Um, to see if there's a pattern there. Like, what was the divorce rate in 1975, right? And who initiated the most divorces? If you go back to 1965 to 1975, it is overwhelmingly married women initiating divorce, and it skyrocketed right after hormonal birth control.
Wow.
And if you look at the, and I did this. If you take the trackings, you can do this on Google, by the way. If you take the graph of the spike in divorces from 1965, and then you take the incidence of prescriptions and usage, the popularity usage of hormonal birth control from 1965 onward. If you look at where the divorce and the hormonal birth control use goes, it's almost identical. Now, I know that correlation is not causation, but that's a hell of a correlation, and it looks almost identical. And to my knowledge, I'm the only one who's ever just like superimposed those two on top of each other. So I was thinking, is there a pattern there? And turns out that there is, and it's a historical pattern that goes all the way back right to about 1965, because there are incentives for like no-fault divorce were there. The reason why we got no-fault divorce back in 1968, courtesy of Ronald Reagan in California, was to facilitate the amount of divorces that were coming through the California system at that time as a result of hormonal birth control and women wanting to get out of those marriages so they can go to Studio 54 and dance disco, right? Whatever it was that they wanted to do. And then what happened is, like, from 1965 to about 1975, maybe 1980, like in that period right there, you see like women enter the workforce. We have Title IX, militant feminism, like from Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan, all of that, the feminine mystique, our bodies, ourselves, the free love generation, the sexual revolution, all the things that happened in the wake of that. And you look at all the things that happened. Part of that was the divorce industry that we know today was forming right at that same time. So now we have the marriage industry that is intimately paired with the divorce industry. And lo and behold, the patterns still hold true. From what, like, back in the 60s, it turned out that women were still divorcing men at the higher rate, right? And there was a 7-year period between. It was still the average age of marriage was still 7 years, because that's where you get the movie from, like the 7-year itch, right? And so the ages might have been different. Like the average age of first marriage in the 60s for women might have been 19, and for a guy it might have been 21 or 22. But the instances of divorce and the instances of like the duration of marriage before divorce, exactly the same. And so the only, like, the correlation that both Dalrock and I came to is that there is at least a financial or a social incentive. I'm not saying which, because I'm not that much of a statistician, but there's still a thematic kind of template for marriage, 7 years, and then divorce. And it's not because the guy was an asshole. It was just because that, she didn't want to be with the guy anymore, or was not fun anymore, or, marriage wasn't what she wanted it to be. There's any number of reasons. I can give any number of reasons for it. But what I can't ignore is the fact that there is a definite correlation between those two. So the more interesting thing about, like, who initiates divorce more? Was it lesbian women? Is it gay men and all that stuff? That, it's funny to laugh at that on Fresh and Fit, but what's really sobering is to see, like, to consider, what are the incentives? Why is it that women divorce 70% of the time and men want to stay in, it's cheaper to keep her, right? They don't want to lose stuff. And for the most part, guys would be happy if they were just having sex regularly. And men will tolerate a lot if they're getting laid regularly. But the thing is that's still a bridge too far for women. And so if they don't feel like they're with the guy that the best they could do, right? Is he really the best I can do? If the answer to that is no, well, there's always the fail-safe of divorce, and you can get out, and before you're 40, nobody wants you, girl. And then you can get out and start over again. And that's a divorce porn fantasy that we sell women, because a lot of times women end up on the short end of that stick. They believe it, that the grass is greener, outside of the marriage, and it doesn't happen. But see, the thing that gets the reason why it's so controversial, like women hate to have this discussion, is because it seems like it's intentional.
Yeah.
It seems like, okay, here's the plan. I'm going to marry this poor schlub who's not, I'm going to settle for him. He's not really my first choice. I really wanted to get with Chad back in my 20s, but he's not going to be locked down. So I'm going to get with this guy, have 2 kids. And then she feels dissatisfied. She's unhappy and she divorces him, takes him for half of his stuff, and takes the kids with him too. And if that seems like a plan, it seems like it's malicious. It seems like it was purpose, whether it was or it wasn't. The fact of the matter is I'm not trying to imply intent, but I am saying that this is the pattern and this is what happens. So I usually let other people sort of come to their conclusions about that.
Yeah. Rollo, I read Myron's book, Why Women Deserve Less, and he talks about the Tom Brady gamble. What was your immediate reaction when you heard about Giselle leaving Tom Brady? Because if you look at him on paper, he's a handsome dude, high status, and then she left him for the jiu-jitsu instructor. But what was your immediate reaction about that?
Okay, so she doesn't need him anymore.
Mm.
She didn't need Tom Brady anymore. And of course, like black pill doomers love that. Like, well, if it didn't work for Tom Brady, it's not going to work for anybody. Like, I love it when that comes out. Or like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. If it doesn't work for Brad Pitt, what do you think is going to work for you? Right? I've been married for like almost 30 years. I'm like, hey, it just depends on who we're talking about here. But the thing is like, if I had to give I'm just going to spitball here because I don't know. I'm just going to speculate. So I can't say one way or the other. But if I had to make a call on this, she's a good looking woman. She actually makes more money than Tom Brady. That was number one. But once you get past like, $100 million, does it matter? Probably not. It's not, nothing's going to affect, like if he wins a Super Bowl, well, he's not going, he's retired now, but when he was playing, whether he wins another Super Bowl or not is not going to really affect it. His lifestyle's not going to change because he's freaking Tom Brady, right? And so Tom Brady's going to do well no matter what. So why would a Giselle want to get with the jiu-jitsu instructor rather than Tom Brady? Well, probably because he was available and there's proximity there. And the guy would have had to have been in at least as good a shape as Tom Brady, who was a NFL, Hall of Fame football quarterback, right? So the guy that the jiu-jitsu, you notice she's not getting with some guy who's like sort of this, slightly chubby kind of overweight. Like that wasn't going to happen, right? So she's basically looking for something that's more exciting, something that was more thrilling, because probably Tom was bored with her. Just because 2 people are really good looking and they're very, very rich does not mean that they're like, fucking like rabbits. It doesn't mean that there's a really great relationship that's going on there. I think we presume that there is because look at them. They're both beautiful. They both have high profile careers. They both make a shit ton of money. Hell, they had kids, I believe. Why wouldn't they work? Well, probably because Giselle's probably full of herself, number one. And then second of all, it's like if they don't see each other, if there's no real connection right there, after a while, it's like he's still Tom Brady. Tom Brady can get laid. He doesn't have to even try to get laid. Women will throw themselves at him. So he could, but so he's got to go home and be faithful to Giselle, who probably doesn't like him enough to want to have sex with him, because the only thing I can think of is that they were in a sexless marriage. Right. And so, because that would be the only reason why a jiu-jitsu instructor who in no way has any kind of the status that Tom Brady does would be in any way appealing. And by the way, this also runs counter. I remember when this happened because it runs counter to a very popular theory that I think has now finally been debunked, which is the mate switching hypothesis, courtesy of David Buss of all people, right? The mate switching hypothesis is that if a woman decides that she's going to cheat on her husband, it's because she's looking for bigger and better things. Like she's looking to move up socioeconomically. And I'm like, there has never been a bigger bullshit theory than I could possibly think of than this. And because they wanted to have some sort of alternative to dual mating strategy, which is alpha fucks beta bucks, right? Which is women look for they look for short-term sexual benefits with a guy who's the hot guy in the foam cannon party in Cancun on spring break, right? Or else they're looking for, or they're looking for the guy who has a lot of money, status. It's cads versus dads, right? That's the dual mating strategy. And that was so egregious and so unpopular with, for evolutionary psychologists who are trying to do brand building themselves, that they had to come up with this cock and bull theory called mate switching hypothesis, which means that it's not really women's fault when they cheat on the man, right? Nobody wanted to blame Giselle for cheating or for getting with the jiu-jitsu instructor, because they would just make up some bullshit about Tom Brady and say, well, it must have been because Tom Brady wasn't meeting her needs. Well, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He looks good for his age. He can get probably any chick he wants to after the game, and he makes millions and millions of dollars, has I don't know how many Super Bowl rings. That's pretty high status, right? Why on earth would she think that getting with a jiu-jitsu instructor who in no way has anything like the status of Tom Brady, why would that be in any way appealing, especially according to this theory of mate switching hypothesis? And the fact of the matter is it's bullshit, because she's getting with the guy because he looks good, because he's available, because he's a jiu-jitsu instructor, probably has a capacity for violence, obviously, because he's a jiu-jitsu instructor, probably looks good, most likely has a six-pack abs. She's not getting with a fat guy. Like that's not the case. And she sure as shit has more money than Tom Brady. So she's not looking to trade up in partners, because there's like a fraction of 1% of men could possibly out earn her. So she's not going for those guys, because most of the guys are way older than her, right? She's going for the jiu-jitsu instructor. Why? Because he's alpha fucks, because he is the alpha fuck side of women's dual mating strategy. She wanted dick. She wanted to have sex. She wanted to get with a guy who she enjoyed fucking, and she probably enjoyed fucking the jiu-jitsu instructor. Why can't we just simply call it what it is and say that this is, as far as I know, I'm the only one saying this. Well, maybe Myron is too, but like, why do we have such a problem focusing on this? Well, the reason is because that doesn't sell books. That doesn't sell dating programs. That doesn't sell the next dating app. If it can in any way, if you can lay infidelity, whether it's on the woman's part or the man's part, if you can lay that at the feet of the man, that app, that book, whatever, is going to be wildly popular. And that's exactly what Dr. David Buss' book, Why Are Men Behaving Badly? It's exactly what it did. And it flew in the face of pretty much everything he had written up to that one point. And that's why I said he's been compromised. He's sold out, and by the way, he did have a dating program at that time too that he was trying to sell. And so it goes back to the black pill doomers saying, why on earth would Giselle do this? Why? Because he's the Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor is not of anywhere near the status of the guy. Yeah, but he was hot and he was fun, and she was probably enjoying having sex with him. And if we could just have that conversation, this is like the beginning and end. It's over. Like, you don't need to discuss anything else.
Yeah.
Because it's Giselle and because it's Tom Brady, and that's, again, like it's sexier to blame it on Tom Brady than it is to blame it on Giselle. And the only way you can blame it on Giselle is if she's fucking him because she likes fucking.
Mm. One thing that I find fascinating, Rollo, is women's perception or idea that they need to have a partner that's always taller than them, the 6'2", whatever, because they need to feel protected. I know some short kings that are trained killers. I'm heavily into martial arts, Rollo, and I've got friends that have fought MMA. They're not that tall, but they're going to keep you safe when they take you out in the night out in the town. What is going on in the female psyche? Why do they need especially someone that's like 4'11"? Why do you need to date someone that's 6'5"?
There's two things. One is the evolutionary aspect of the whole thing. Women are always going to select for a guy that is taller than them. The reason, I remember when this conversation became more popularized because, what was it, Tinder or Hinge put a filter on the app saying filter out guys under 6 feet, and women just overwhelmingly did. And what happens is then they pretty much filter out 85%, I think we're 84% of the male population, because only 16% of the male population is 6 foot. You go 6'1", 6'2", now you're down to about 7%.
It's incredible.
That it's like you're basically just shooting yourself in the foot. And but women tend to want guys who are taller than them because it's not so much can this guy fight. Yeah, there's guys who are much shorter that are MMA fighters who can like beat the living fuck out of you for sure. But that doesn't make any difference when you're talking about 200,000 years of evolution that predisposes women to the proclivity of wanting a guy who is tall, and not just taller than them. Because this is where a lot of guys like I threw this at Mike. I'm like really pissed off. It's not just about being taller, because I used to think this too. Like, well, ladies, you're 5'6", 5'5", so all a guy has to be is 5'6" or 5'7".
Yeah.
Right? That's all it has to be, right? You just have to be a little bit taller. The problem is that works in a vacuum. But you take that guy and you put him in a room full of other guys at the bar or something like that, and he's still the shortest guy in the room, and everybody else is, and I know because I'm 5'11", and I hang out with guys who are like 6 foot, 6'4". Like Myron Gaines is at least 6'3".
Yeah, he's tall, isn't he?
Justin Waller's
Yeah.
6'4". Mystery is 6'5". Sean Kelly is 6'7". George Gammon is at least 6'6". Even I have this one picture of me in between George Gammon and Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki is at least 6'2". I'm in between a guy who's 6'2" and a guy who's like 6'5", right? And I'm 5'11", and people go, "I knew he was a manlet." You know, I knew he's only 4'11", you know, and I'm like, no, man, these guys are just way taller. But that was what woke me up, is that it doesn't matter that like I can go out with a woman who's like 5'5", and I'm 5'11", I'm 6 foot, I'm towering over her, right?
Yeah.
Like by half a foot, right? Doesn't matter if I'm standing next to Justin Waller and Myron Gaines, because now I'm the shortest guy in the room, even though I'm 5'11". So respectively speaking, I could be taller, but if there's a taller guy than me, he's getting more attention. Now, again, this isn't like, it's the female psyche, but it's from hundreds of thousands of years of evolution for women selecting for taller guys, because those guys were just through physical prowess look like they had the capacity for violence, and B, they look like they could do some protecting. It's image, it's perception. Whether or not that's true makes no difference. It's like it's the peacock's tail theory, right? You know, it's like the guy could be 6'5" and be a complete pussy. But the idea, the evolutionary, proclivity, the instinct, I guess I should say, is that the guy that looks like that is going to be a better choice of mate for a woman. That's why you get that stupid song, 6'5", fine, wise, trust fund, that kind of shit. All of those, by the way, are all those are prerequisites for high value guys, at least, and that's why it's funny, right? But it's not enough just to be taller. You have to be taller than anybody else in a given situation, right? Now, I'm going to throw all of that out the window, because I know guys right now who are in my program, who are in Mike's program. Hell, I'm going to say this again. The guy who's a drummer in my band, his name is Jake, and Jake is 5'6". Jake gets more pussy than any guy I know
Really?
on planet Earth.
Wow.
The guy is just, because his facial, okay, I'll give you looks maxers. I'll give you this. He does have a good facial structure. He has a good smile to him. He's not, I'm in better shape than he is. He could probably, like, I'm trying to help him like train a little bit so he can get more muscular. But even when he's hooking up with girls, he just does it because he's charming. He has good game. He like a naturally good game. And he's good looking enough that he can make it work for him. He knows, he tells me that we joke about it all the time. He's fighting from a deficit. He knows that he's short. He knows that he's like 5'6". He's shorter than most guys in the room, but you're not going to outgame him. and you're not going to and he's got, like I said, good draw structure, and he's got a good symmetrical face as well. So there is that. But primarily it's because he's good at conversation. He gets the girls talking about themselves. He's funny, he's charming, he knows his shit. And so like when people say, "Oh, it's not about game," I'm like, bullshit, it's not. That is definitely a part. That's an element to it. Now, people will ask me this all the time. They'll say, like, well, is height part of looks and game? Yes, it is. It's a force multiplier for sure. Is it necessary to get laid? No, it doesn't have to be. But like for instance, it's not so much about whether you have a capacity for violence or not. It's, do you know that you're like the average height of a man in the United States is 5'9". So I'm already ahead of the game by 2 inches, right? Um, and so if like I think Tom Cruise is 5'9", right?
Yeah, he's only a little fella.
But he doesn't worry. Like, he's Tom fucking Cruise. Like, he looks
Mm.
good for his age. He's like, what, 60, 61 right now? Even Brad Pitt. I don't know how tall Brad Pitt is, but he is 61 years old right now. And he looks like he's in his like maybe late 40s, I think. He still looks like Brad Pitt, right? So there are other confounding variables that go along with like height. If you know that height is a deficit for you, why wouldn't you like try to maximize your strength in other areas? It's not a fucking death sentence. And I know because I've seen it. I've seen guys go, there's a guy, God, what is his name? Anthony something or other. And he is in the MOA program, and he is just this side of like 5'2" or 5'3", and that dude cleans up. Because
Really?
his fucking game. He's on point with the girl. Now, the funny thing is the girls know this. They're especially in heels, these girls are towering over him. But he's so good at like knowing what to say and how to work to his own best advantage with his game and his social skills. And he knows people. He's good at networking. He's got money, but not like a lot of money. So he has maximized his other strengths in other areas that make up for the deficit of the fact that he's like 5'2", 5'3", right? So it's not height is never a death sentence. So
Yeah. I found this absolutely fascinating, Rollo, when you talked about sexual market value. Men peak, if I remember correctly, you said around 36, and then it's kind of like a bell curve. Is that correct?
yeah, some
Yeah.
people, they'll say it's even further out than that, which I
Wow.
still kind of disagree with. But like I was writing that when I wrote that post, it was my infamous bell curve graph.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't meant to be scientific. It was actually meant to be more like tongue in cheek when I was writing it. But over the years since I wrote that essay and I made that graph, everybody throws it in my face now and then. And I go, yeah, well, since then I've got all this other data that backs this up, that shows that my instinct, my hunch was right. So let's have a conversation about that, right? Well, where's your data? Where's this? This isn't hard data, blah, blah, blah. I think, well, it was never meant to be. But since you're asking, here is some hard data as to, at what age do men and women peak. And like I was joking around before, it's like, the reason why they call the store Forever 21 and not Forever 41 is because that's right around 23. That's where I usually peg women's like peak sexual market value. And people fight me on this because they think that I'm talking just about looks, and I'm not. Because men and women have different ways of measure, they have different metrics for sexual market value. For men, it's almost entirely it's looks and sexual availability, youth, fertility, beauty. Obviously we got the hips to waist ratio, got it. But all those are indicators of youth and fertility, right? So it comes back down to beauty and sex appeal and availability. And those are really the primary factors that guys are looking at. There's a study in this book called Dataclysm, and it was written by the guy who was, at the time, I don't know if he still is, but he was the owner of Match.com. Or no, okcupid.com. And he took all the data sets from from 2000 to 2014, aggregated it all together, and found out that the age at which men find women the most attractive is about 23 years old, right? 21 to 24, somewhere in there. And that was all the way from 18 to 99, right? That on that one spot, never changed. No variation. I'm very little variation. For women, it was always anywhere between 3 to 5 to 7 years older than they were, right? So if there was a woman who was 25 years old, a guy who was 28 looked best to her, right? A guy who was 31 look best to her, somewhere in that range. And it depends on the age. Like the younger the woman was, the more variation. The older that woman was, it became a little bit more specific. Like they had to be a little bit older than she was. And I think that has to do with the fact that women understand that it takes longer for men to mature into their peak potential. And because for women have much higher criteria for sex appeal for men, right? So it's not just that he looks good. He does have to look good. That makes him valuable on the sexual marketplace, right? But once you get past that, well, what else? Well, the money, muscles, and game. He's got to have a good job. He's got to have he's got to be able to socialize. He has to be well liked. There's social proof. There's pre-selection. Is he the man that other men want to be and other women want to fuck? Does he like dogs? Does he want to go to Disneyland and like rainbows? And does my mom like him? And does he want kids in the future? This big, like I said, this laundry list of prerequisites. That's, like I said, you don't have to have all of those simultaneously, but you got to check off some of those in the boxes there. And usually when a guy hits about 35, 36, he's gotten to the point where he at least should have maximized his potential. And it takes longer for guys to maximize their potential. So you made partner in the law firm, right? You did your residency and now you're a surgeon, right? Or you've been an entrepreneur and your business is finally taking off and you're starting to hit your stride. You're finally hitting your prime right around 35, 36, 37 years old. And that's when, if you stayed single and if you still maintain your physique and you still look good and you have a good attitude and you are well liked and you're a well-rounded individual, you're going to check off more of those boxes at 35 than you ever could at 25, right? Because it takes longer to get into those spots that would make you maximally attractive. So the criteria is different for men than it is for women. So men tend to just want a hot piece of ass, and yeah, because we're guys. But then do women want a hot guy? Yeah, of course they do. But there's more to it than just the hot guy part. And so when women get older, and that's why, when I'm saying which age looks best for women and it staggers upward, the reason for that is because the guys who are older should be made already. They should have maximized that potential, right? And so it becomes much more specific the older a woman gets. And also, as women age, their sex appeal and their sexual agency decays. And even if that's not the case, the idea that it is the case is pervasive. So it sticks around. Like when guys ask me this all the time, Rollo, the wall is undefeated. The wall. And it's like, all these guys are like, they're either too happy or they're too pissed off about the wall, right? It's like, yeah, the wall's going to look, Tom Cruise is 61 and look at his co-stars in Top Gun, like the girl that was in Top Gun with him, and she's just this hideous, wildebeest, and he still looks good. See, like that's going to happen for them, right? So this is the wall. It's undefeated, right? And then there's the guys who are like too pissed off about it, which is, it doesn't matter if the woman's 40, there's going to be a guy that's going to fuck her anyways. And they're like, doesn't matter about the wall whatsoever. So what is it? Is it Tom Cruise is the wall is undefeated, or the wall doesn't matter? Like they don't know what to do with themselves. And so but the reason why they think that way is because they only put the wall in terms of looks. So what happens, from doing my show with Mike, from doing Access Vegas, I can point out we've had girls on the show who are 40 plus years old, like 41, 42 years old. Some of them have 1 or 2 kids and they still are in bikini contests.
Wow.
Bikini contests.
Yeah.
They're still FHM models. They're still Maxim cover models, right? Some of them are former Playboy or Penthouse models, right? And they still, like I've been tricked. I have been tricked on several occasions because people like Mike go, how old do you think that girl is? And we're talking about this girl named Jamie Villamore. Jamie Villamore is 44 years old. She has 2 kids and she still can model for FHM. She is fucking hot. And so is that representative of the wall? Because women will see that and will go, see, these red pill guys don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, no, the wall doesn't start here. The wall starts here, right? So when that girl is 43 years old, she understands that she can't compete with the 23-year-old version of herself. So if that woman is single at 43 years old and she looks good, odds are she's going to do better in the sexual marketplace, no doubt, okay? But she's not going to do as good as she would when she was 23 years old. And I'm also talking about extreme outliers. Most women are not going to be able to maintain that or have they're too lethargic too. when it comes back to like what's a normal person. And I always point out that like if you're at like Las Vegas airport, or you're like LAX or something like that, or you're in a major airport, when you go through airport security and you're going from security to whatever your gate is, stop for a minute, put your phone away, and just people watch when you're walking from the gate, from the TSA to the gate, and look at the people around you, especially in big metropolitan airports like Las Vegas is one, right? That's a cross section of the United States. That's a normal person, and all of them are overweight, and all of them are frumpy, and they have medical conditions. They have they're the products of their habits. And you look at that, and so for me for guys, when we're online or we're dealing with people in social media and everything, or we see, like I just mentioned, like Jamie Villamore is 43 and she looks hot as fuck, right? That if she walked through Las Vegas airport in shorts and a tight shirt or something like that, she would be like a wild zoo animal escaped from the zoo, like walking through, or strolling through a suburban area, right? And like people just, they can't believe their eyes because it's that much of an outlier. There's a God, I forget. This Instagram account, and I forget the name of it, but it's this hot stewardess, and she is just like, she's got these really long blonde hair, looks like sort of like maybe she's Swedish or she's like Norwegian or something like that, and she's got tits out to here, and she's absolutely thin, she's absolutely gorgeous, and she's dressed in this stewardess's outfit. She's got the little hat on, and she's got the stewardess outfit on, and she's just walking. The original movies or the clips were her walking through airports, and then she's walking through malls, and then she's and it's not, the camera doesn't focus on her, it focuses on everybody looking at her, and they're like, and women are like, that, like, they can't believe their eyes. And like I said, it was like proof of concept. I'm like, a chick like that walking through the airport is going to look like an escaped zoo animal.
Mm.
Because it's such an outlier. And I have to always remember that when I'm dealing with guys who are too happy or too pissed off about the wall, because they're looking at extreme outliers for what they think is the common representation of women, and it's simply not. Like, the common representation is all the fat chicks that you see in the airport when you're walking to your gate. That's who you should be really be concerned about, not the overly hot ones.
Yeah.
Or the overly ugly ones, for that matter, just the mids, like the in-betweens, right? That's really what we're talking about. And so it's really easy, even for myself. Sometimes I have to back up off of this and go, this is not everybody. Like, if I'm surrounded by all these beautiful women on Access Vegas, it's like, I have to remember that this is not everybody's common experience.
That's right.
Always have to bring it back down to earth.
Yeah. And a perfect example of this too, Rollo, is if you look at Leonardo DiCaprio. I've heard you talk about this as well. Even if I can't remember how old Sean Connery was in some of the James Bond movies. He was quite old, but still, women fancied him. What sort of age does it tip off?
I just saw, God damn it. My wife just showed me this. She showed me a picture of Rick Springfield and Dick Van Dyke, and they were in the gym together. And Rick Springfield is like 73 or 77, something like that. And dude looks good. I mean, for 77, he's like in there lifting weights. Dick Van Dyke is 99 years old. And he's at the gym and he's lifting. He looks like he's completely with it, right? Now, I'm not saying he's going to go get laid, or maybe Rick Springfield will. But the thing is like, it depends on how dedicated you are to maintaining that physique, maintaining that status, right? I'm 57 years old. I train, I go to Powerhouse Gym. I'm on TRT. Yes. People say, oh, that's cheating. That's not cheating for me. That might be cheating for you, but that's not cheating for me. I get to do that. But I have no problem with women who have breast implants. In fact, please go get more. Go ahead. You want to get your face done, your nose done, whatever it is. We live in a day and an age where we can do that now. Most women who came before you could never have done that before. And I'm like all for it. And go, well, she's fake, or those boobs are fake and plastic. I'm like, yeah, I love them. I love them that much more. Right. Because if you can do something to sort of maintain and sort of preserve your youth, or preserve your looks, I don't see why you wouldn't. Like, it boggles my mind why people wouldn't do that. But it's like, you can, I work with a lot of older guys with Reignite. Like I said, my demographic is the 45 to 65 range. And I personally know guys who are in their 60s who are getting after it with women who are 45 years old. Now, oh, she's 45. Well, okay. Yeah, but he's 60 and she's 45. That's an age range, right? I'm not saying, like, I know guys who are in their 50. Hell, if I can use Mike Sartain. Mike Sartain's 47 years old. His girlfriend is like, his current girlfriend now, I believe she's 25 or 26. So, but that's Mike Sartain. Again, I'm using an extreme outlier here. Can every guy pull that off? No, but the potential is there. You can do it if you stay on top of your game. If you are self-motivated, if you get up every morning with a stiff dick and a stiff middle finger for the world, like why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do what you're going to do? Like, I constantly get this from haters all the time, right? They'll be like, well, imagine being Rollo's agent looking like he does, right? Imagine being Rollo's agent, like he looks like he's, like, if I wear a band t-shirt or something like that. I play in a band, right? So, like, if I don't look like what they think a 57-year-old guy should look like, then suddenly that's it's open season on Rollo. We can talk, oh, imagine looking like him. Like, I look better than all of you guys because I'm in shape. Because I dedicate myself to my physique. I dedicate myself to my game. I dedicate myself to staying on top of my money and everything else and doing what I do. And I like to think I'm doing something right. But the thing is it possible to maintain sex appeal, like for a guy to maintain status? Yes, much more so, I think, than women. Because remember, women's agency is primarily based on their sexuality. I'm not saying that's the only thing that's valuable about women, but it is the primary agency. That's why, once again, forever 21, not forever 41. Well, the reason is because youth, fertility, beauty, the cosmetic industry, all of that stuff is all geared to make women look younger. Same thing with boob implants, same thing with a facelift, same thing with Botox, same thing with a Brazilian butt lift, same, whatever, name the cosmetic surgery, and it's meant to make women look younger. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And so, like, I always laugh when these guys hit me up and they're like, like, imagine looking like Rollo at his age. I'm like, yeah, imagine, because that's all you're ever going to be able to do. But I'm always curious. I'm like, what do you think a 57-year-old guy should look like? Like, should I be in like a polo shirt and like I just got off the golf course and sensible Dockers and some loafers or something like that, and I don't know, like one of those little paperboy hats or something, bouncing my grandchildren on my knee and spinning yarns about the old day. Like, what do you think I should be doing? And there's never any answer to that. It's just they just want to like throw shade at you because you're doing something. Like we were talking before about like the guys who aren't motivated and the guys who are sedated and everything. Well, when you see somebody who's been doing it and going after it as long as I have and still, doing what I do, I'm doing shit that they aren't doing because they're still stuck in their bed rotting, right? They're still sitting in their beds. They're still doom scrolling. They're not there. There's no motivation. Yeah. And so their only incentive, their only real motivation is to throw shade at me because that in some way gives them some sort of satisfaction in life. And like, I don't care. I mean, please do, because all it does is just build my brand that much more. So, yeah. But I think guys, I mean, to answer your question, I think guys have a much longer shelf life, or have the potential for much longer shelf life than women do. And in some ways, is that unfair? Yeah, it's a double standard. Yes, it's a double standard. There's many double standards in this world. And I love it when I'll get like sort of the evolutionary psychologists who hate on me, like, oh, well, Rollo's trying to sell these guys and thinking that they still got it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I know they do because I've seen them do it. I'm here live in person to working with these guys. I see it happen live in real time. So don't tell me it can't be done or I'm blowing sweet sunshine up their ass, because I see the success. I see the results. I see the growth. I see these guys I talk with them every week. We have a Zoom call every week. We check in with each other every week. The tribe meets together every week and we talk about what's going on. We talk about our wins. We talk about our losses. We talk about all this stuff. And when we get together, like we have our meetups every other month, like whether it's in Vegas or it's in Miami or whatever else, like I see these guys doing it, and they're doing more than the guys who are bed rotting and doom scrolling.
Yeah. Rollo, I heard an alarming stat. By age 30, women are now childless, and half of them will probably never have children. Also, over 80% of women who were childless after their fertility window had closed did not intend to not have children. So, in other words, involuntary childlessness happened. And Rollo, these women have support groups around the world, mate, where they come to grieve for the families that they never had. And
Mhm.
my heart breaks for these women, Rollo. Like, it's just so damn sad to hear about that. And not to mention, we do have a declining birth rate. How worried are you about this?
It's all over the world, actually. It's the
Yeah.
declining fertility rates were below replace, and it depends on the country, but like what is it? South Korea. South Korea is like North Korea could just walk across the border if they want to. There's just simply not enough people there. Um, no, the study you're talking about was a forecast by
Mm.
Morgan Stanley in 2018, and it was called, and you can look this up. It's called The Rise of the She Economy. And what it was doing was it was a financial forecast for the next like 25 years or whatever. And so this was 2018, and I remember this distinctly because Pat Campbell and I talked about this on the radio when it first came out. And the prognosis or the forecast was such that what was it? Women of prime working age, which was 25 to 44, of that demographic, 44% of them would be single. There's nothing about childlessness. There's nothing about like, oh, they're going to be regretting it or anything like that. That was all they were doing. The only number that was represented in that study there was nothing about childlessness rates. Now we can infer from that that if they're going to be if they don't have a partner or whatever, they're going to be unmarried or they're going to be single. And this was by 2030.
Yep.
So by 2030, 43 or 45% of women between the ages of 25 and 44 would be single. Now we infer that they're going to be childless on top of that, but that wasn't mentioned in the study. You can go look at it. It's The Rise of the She Economy.
Yep.
It's available on Morgan Stanley. And I really wish people would it's one of those things where I always tell you, like, people like bastardize and they kind of rejigger the numbers because it sounds more sexy to say, oh, they're going to be single and childless and lonely. And oh, boy, they're really going to get theirs. They're going to get their comeuppance. Women better shape up and fly straight, or else, we're not going to have enough babies to repopulate the earth. Right. And again, it's like guys are either too happy or they're too pissed off about it. Right. So what I would suggest, and this is one of my biggest problems with Pearl, is she keeps throwing that same stat out there over and over and over again. Pearl, my dear, there is nothing in that study that says anything about childlessness. Now we can, like I said, we can infer that. We already know that if you pair that data up with the data I just mentioned, like how 67% of Gen Z guys are single and 34% of Gen Z women between the ages of 18 and 29 are single as well, you can make correlations from that. And that I suggest you do. Please go and take that data and lay the graph on top of the other graph and see where the correlations are with something like that. But the fact that there are support groups for women who wanted to have kids and they never did, remember that they're going to lay that at the feet of men, no matter what. We couldn't find the right guy. Like I remember, was it Olympic runner, Lolo Jones. And she was a big deal back in the day at the same time Tim Tebow was, because she was a good Christian and she was saving herself for marriage. And she was an Olympic runner, and I think she might have been on the bobsled team too. But poor Lolo, at 40 years old, the last time I saw her, she was freezing her eggs at like 39 years old. She wanted to do it before she was 40 because she still desperately wanted children. She was in tears because she didn't find the right guy. She was saying God had not dropped a guy in her lap or whatever. And then, and so now you have this really heart-wrenching story about this woman, and it's really going to come back down to, well, guys ain't living up to their responsibilities. Guys aren't living up to their expectations. And to a certain degree, they're right. But it's not a one-way street. Okay. It's also women's standards. It's also women's inability to look past the perceptual. It's also women's inability to sort of get over themselves from an ego sense, right? Like, only one of the things I think, two of the biggest lies that we sell women these days is, the first one is they can be happy. No, they can be happy, right? That happiness, contentment is some sort of sustainable long-term thing. And not only that, every woman deserves to be happy. And I'll tell you right now, there's no such thing as happiness. No one is ever happy.
Mm.
Content is the human condition, and that's a good thing. That's a feature, not a bug. Okay, we should be discontent. We should be creatively discontent, but we should throw away this idea that happiness is some sort of sustainable nirvana that women all deserve, right? Because happiness is an emotion. It's an emotive state, and it's not something that we are. It's something that we feel when we're doing something that triggers the feeling, the emotion of happiness, the contentment, the inherent reward of doing something that is enjoyable makes us feel happy when we're doing things. So you cannot be happy. You can do things that make you feel the emotion of happiness. And that's really the point of really most emotions, is to prompt us from one condition to another condition. So if we're doing something that we really find enjoyable, we're going to feel happy when we're playing guitar, or when we're, writing a book, or when we're doing whatever it is that you get off on that is intrinsically rewarding to you, right? And then you can apply the same thing to like anxiety or whatever. Like if you're depressed, that's an emotion, and it's trying to prompt you from an unsustainable state into another sustainable state, right? So when we're talking about happiness, and we've sold women on this bill of goods that they can just simply be happy, and then they're not. Well, if I divorce my husband, then I'll be happy. I'll just do eat, pray, love, right? Once I get out of this situation, I'll be happy. Once I do X, I'll be happy. I'll be happy in the future, right? And if that's not forthcoming, then we drug women. We give them SSRIs. We give them antidepressants so that we have a chemical cure for us selling women on the idea that they can be permanently content. And they cannot, because it's simply not a state. It's not a natural state of human beings, right? And so instead, we sell them Zoloft, right? We sell them Xanax. We sell them whatever SSRIs, and to staggering rates right now. And so that's lie number one. Lie number two is well, I should say it's the lie of feminism, which is women are simultaneously a victim and they're a superhero at the same time, right? So if something bad has happened to a woman, it's what's called hypo agency as opposed to hyper agency. Hyper agency is, I happen to the world. I go out there and I exercise my will upon the world. Hypo agency is, the world happens to me. I'm the victim of this circumstance. I'm the victim of this thing. So what happens is women on the fly can change from being the victim to being a superhero. So you can have it all. You can be an astronaut and a mother and be the CEO of this company and do this and do that and do all this great stuff because you're an alpha female, but you're also a victim of the patriarchy, right? And so there's this constant like they're conflicting messages that we give to women. And what happens is they end up in this unsustainable, again, we combine this with the happiness thing, right? This unsustainable state where we say, well, to be happy or to have a good life is you got to have 2 kids. I have literally seen articles that say the happiest demographic of happiest. Anytime I see that, I know it's bullshit, but they go, the happiest demographic of women are single and childless women. And then literally 2 days later, there'll be another article that say the single most happiest group of women is women who have a family with 2 kids and a loving husband, right? It'll be exactly the polar opposite of that article. And it's literally a conflicting message on a daily basis. And so if women lack happiness, that's the sustainable happiness that they know that they deserve, they won't settle for anything less, right? It's the same thing with guys, right? They want to know that they have got the best guy that they can possibly get. Is he the best I can do? And if that answer is no, then it's the man's fault. the answer is no. It's like, well, you're lowering your standards. Women are never allowed, like anytime a woman gets with a guy, if there's even a hint that she might be lowering her standards, she is accepting less than perfect. And that leads to unhappiness, right? Which we have a chemical treatment for. And so what happens is, when I look at like Lolo Jones freezing her eggs, it used to be this. Women used to say the reason they were freezing their eggs was because they were focusing on their career. They were professional alpha female women, and they're like, I don't have any time for this. I want to have kids in the future, so I'm going to freeze my eggs now, and I'm going to focus on my career. And it turns out that's all bullshit. The reason they're freezing their eggs is because they can't find the right guy, because they can't find the perfect guy. They can't find the guy who wants to go off into the future with them. And primarily because we've empowered women to the point where they think that they are alpha females.
Yes.
So what happens is they get to the point where they've developed an entire life and life and lifestyle around that mindset, around that ego investment in themselves, that they get 35, 36, 40, 41, and then they realize, well, I'm not going to be able to have kids now, or they're this side of menopause, right? And that's exactly what happened with Lolo Jones. Like, it wasn't about a career choice. She can't find the perfect guy. The perfect guy for her is, whoever God is going to bring to her doorstep, which is kind of like, again, it goes back to this unrealistic expectations. So is it really guys' fault for not being a woman's ideal? Well, what's their incentive? Like, you go back to the black pill doomers. What's their incentive? Why would they want to build up a life when they're never going to be the perfect guy? Women tend to want like turnkey relationships. They want to be. That's why do you think Gen Z gets with older guys? Because they're more made than Gen Z guys. With a Gen Z 25, 27-year-old girl wants to get with a guy who's in his 30s, maybe even his early 40s. Why? Well, because he's got his shit together, right? And he's a higher value guy than the 25-year-old guys that they know who don't have anything to show for themselves and doesn't look like they're going to be showing anything for themselves ever at all, right? So why wouldn't they? It's just a pragmatic choice. And so what happens is, you got these women who build this lifestyle up hoping that they're going to be able to sort of cash in at a future date. And that date never happens. So what do we have along the way? Well, we have social programs like, we're going to get together and cry over it, or we're going to form, we're going to find some way to write the next article and raise awareness of the fertility rates and all this other shit that goes on. And it's really, I'm not saying it's men's fault, and I'm not saying it's women's fault. It's a confluence of the both of them. And I would say it probably started with female empowerment. Again, going back to the hormonal birth control and all of the social changes that occurred as a result of that. But it's just people always ask me, like, at the end. I've given this talk before, but they always ask, "What's the solution?" I'm going to say, I don't know. We're still trying to figure out how to do relationships in the 21st century, because we have programs like this. We have The Rational Male. We have access to information. We have Jim Sexton to give us divorce and marriage stats. We can watch Matt Walsh, pontificate and shake, wag his finger at somebody, and it's always present. It's always there. And if you are in any way not living, like for women, you're not living the Instagram lifestyle, then you're settling. If you're not making memories that you can go and you're in Ibiza or something like that with your girlfriends, it's like, are you really living I'm going to live my best life, girl? Well, best life doesn't include kids, and it doesn't include a husband at this point. It might include a dog, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's so damn sad, Rollo. It really is. And something that you and I are both grateful for is, our mums. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it wasn't for our beautiful mums. And I think also too, Rollo, if I remember correctly, you said, I think in a podcast, you said, I've done all the right things. I've got the career, I make good salary, and yet now I'm such and such year, however old, and I can't find a guy. And you said you've become the man that you want to marry. And that's kind of resonating. And I think, how has modern feminism influenced dating expectations, especially around gender roles, leadership, financial responsibility, and all those kind of things?
Well, like when I mentioned that, I was actually I was hanging out with Robert Kiyosaki, and it was some of his female staff. And once they realized I was working with Robert, then they wanted a piece of me, right? And so I remember I had this one girl who had gone to college, and I think she had a master's degree in like marketing or something like that. And she was just a little past like 33 or 34, I think. And, of course, she asked me that question. She's like, what is it about guys? Like, where are the good guys, Rollo? You know, how can I, how can I find a good guy to marry? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, you have to remember that you're a product of whatever your mindset has been up to this point. That's number one. Number two is, again, I was using Gloria Steinem's words for you become the man that you wanted to marry. And the reason why women do that, or they think they're boss babes or boss bitches, whatever, or they're alpha females, is, well, first of all, there's no such thing as an alpha female. There's a female who lives like an alpha male, right? When women say I'm an alpha female, they're basically saying I'm an alpha male with tits and a vagina. That's pretty much what it is, because they're living a male dynamic. They're living a male paradigm, and they're doing it based on what they think men like. Well, this is what men do, so I'm going to do this, right? We can do anything we want to. There's no difference between men and women, but there is. And what happens is to be more attractive, they follow a male life plan that would make an alpha male very attractive. So if you have an alpha female and she's the CEO of a company, or she's, she's got a master's degree in this, and she's got, money in the bank, and she, somewhat takes care of herself. She's semi good looking, but the older she gets, it's this attitude, and she's not feminine at all. She's much more masculine as a result, because she thinks that that's an ideal that she should live up to, which is an alpha female ideal. But the problem is she's living an alpha male ideal as like it's just a gender swapped character is what it is. Really, an alpha female is like a bikini model. It's think of the best looking chick you can think of as a lingerie model or a bikini model. Those women are alpha females because they can outcompete other women in that game in femininity rather than masculinity. So whenever we're talking about alpha females, it's not there's no such thing as an alpha female, right? It's just an alpha male with a gender swapped alpha male is all it is. But the reason why there's that frustration is because they've been sold on a couple of things. The first one is that men are inherently untrustworthy. So men are basically, there's three archetypes for men today. There is the borderline abuser, who's going to, the abusive guy who is he's always a narcissist afterwards, right? Then there's the Homer Simpson. There's the guy who is, he needs mom to help him save himself from himself, right? Or he's the Dr. Huxtable. He's the everybody loves him. He's the lovable doofy dad who needs mom to so he doesn't put his finger in the light socket kind of thing. You'll see it on every freaking commercial. That's right. And then there's the more recent one, which is the incompetent guy. And he's really more like the Gen Z era guy. He's the guy who doesn't know how to tie a necktie. He's the guy who doesn't know how to drive a stick shift or change a tire. He's just incompetent, right? He needs somebody. He's a hire somebody to come and fix his toilet for him, that kind of thing. So if those are the three guys that women get to choose from, they're like, fuck this. I don't want to have any of these guys because I can't trust them with my kids. I can't trust them in the future. I can't trust them. Like, men are inherently untrustworthy. So what happens is, because there is that condition of untrustworthiness or distrust, I should say, women have to do it themselves. They have to provide their own security. And so when we're looking at I always talk about hypergamy as in terms of alpha fucks and beta bucks. I'm going to look at the beta buck side here, which is provisioning, protection, and parental investment. If men can't be trusted, they sure as shit can't be trusted for provisioning, protection, or parental investment. So they have to do it themselves. They have to fill the void and fill the vacuum that men, that they believe anyways, true or false, that they believe that men have left open to them and they're forcing them into. That's why you get that's how you get an alpha female, right? That's how you get overbearing women who are boss babes and want to run the show and have all the authority and tell, make the rules, right? And that's why they have a really tough time deferring to male authority, right? That's why when I go on Fresh and Fit, or I go on Access Vegas or something, it's like women don't want to defer to a man's authority because they're not trustworthy. And the only guy who would be trustworthy has to be so astronomically high status and high paid and good looking that she would give up, like, okay, everything is like, and even still they have a trouble letting go of the ability to sort of, be the masters of their own fate, right? They still want to feel secure. I forget Allie, this girl, Allie, I knew. She did this one. She was 28 and she married a guy who was 50. And she did this very viral video. I think it was on TikTok and it made its way over to Instagram too. And she was talking about how at 28 she trusts her husband implicitly. She wants to have babies. She wants to be a good housewife, and she wants to be this traditional woman. And women lost their minds. The reason why it went viral is because all these chicks came out of the woodwork and they're going, you better have a job, girl, and you better make sure you get a bag, and you better have something else going for you, because you never know if a guy like that is going to want to fuck his secretary or get a trophy wife or something like that. You won't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. And because all of those women who were responding to her, that made them uneasy. Like they bristled at this, because it put them into a position where they had to consider actually doing that themselves. And so they were like, well, you better have an insurance policy, which is like, you better have a job, or you better have some way to make money for yourself, because men can't be trusted for your security. Even a guy who was like, I knew her husband, like a guy who was 50 years old, make all kinds of money, certainly could take care of her, certainly could take care of the kids, was happy as a pig in shit that he was like banging a 28-year-old girl when he was 50, something like that. And he couldn't believe his luck, right? He's not going to go cheat on that. But that was the inference. And the reason for that is because women are taught that men are inherently untrustworthy. Even the most trustworthy of guys, the most made guys, the guys who are even the Tom Bradys, you can't trust them, right? And so if you can't trust Tom Brady, if you can't trust that guy, the only person you can trust is yourself. And so you have to step into that, and you got to get your education. You've got to get your HR job. You've got to get your entrepreneurship. You got to move up in the company. You got to be able to provide your own provisioning and long-term security, right? And what happens is women get real good at that. And the problem is they spend so much time getting good at that because they need that insurance policy that no other guy wants to get with them, because because that's a masculine trait, right? So they lose that femininity. So when women say, Rollo, how do I get a guy? Where are all the good guys at? How do I get married? Blah, blah, blah. And I go, well, we've come full circle. You need to get in touch with your inner feminine. You need to get in touch with your femininity. And what's the first thing out of their mouth? You mean I have to act stupid? You mean I have to dumb myself down? Like they equate feminine qualities with stupidity. I'm like, no, of course not. There's strength of femininity. You just don't see it because you've been so hyper focused on this alpha male paradigm, this male life path, that you have, like, for me to say, get in touch with your feminine means I'm telling you to act stupid. And I don't know where else to go with it after that, because you can't tell them anything, because they've invested their personalities in that paradigm for so long that it seems like they're acting stupid. It's an alien concept. I'm speaking Swahili, right? I'm speaking a different language to them, and they can't wrap their heads around that. And so when I get that question from women, I know what I'm in for when I have to talk to them. But so what's the real solution for that is for women to sort of bust themselves down and to trust men. Like for me to say, well, you just have to trust guys. that is like next to impossible. And it's like they want to live. I brought this up on the show not too long ago. I brought up the fact that most women today, especially like OnlyFans girls, OnlyFans women, the ones that I've encountered, anyways, I realize not every woman makes a shit ton of money, but the ones who do make a lot of money, their life plan looks a lot like the plot from Pretty Woman. And what it is like they're the hooker with the heart of gold, right? They make all kinds of money, but the only guy that can lift them out of the lifestyle or lift them out of the alpha male or female paradigm, and the only man who with the could possibly do that has to be this multi-million billionaire, you know, industrialist, very over the top elite level guy who happens to like hookers to pull them out of the lifestyle and then make an honest woman out of her. Right? It's like their retirement plan is finding a suitcase full of money on the side of the road. and so to tell them like, hey, go watch Pretty Woman, that's what you think is going to happen to you, and it's not going to happen to you. So you better come up with a different plan.
Yeah. Rollo, I've got one final question for you. If you had to give one prescription to both young men and women to make dating more successful today, what would it be?
Meet in person. That would be number one. Most women like that I talk to on the shows, that they want that more than anything. I think we're starting to see that trend sort of take root right now, because like a lot of people are sort of abandoning Hinge and Bumble and Tinder and all these dating apps right now. I don't know what comes next, but I think that meeting in person is you have like guys don't realize that if you're trying to meet chicks on Tinder or any of the dating apps, that you're in what's called the tournament ranking system.
Yeah.
So you're already fighting back from a deficit, right? And then God forbid you actually are honest about your profile and you say, oh, I'm actually 5'5", and all the filters are set for 6 foot. I think you have a better, I've said this to my guys, Mike says the same thing to MOA guys. It's like you have a much better chance or much better odds of meeting somebody significant and actually having a good relationship with them if you meet them live in real time. And that is really tough for guys because we're so used to the buffer of, I'm going to, I have really good riz on my text game and all this stuff. And I would say for both men and women, meeting live in real time it's something that AI is never going to be able to compensate for. And then also understand that you still are going to have to deal with technology. So actually the number one dating app on planet Earth is Instagram. It's not Hinge or Bumble or Tinder. But being able to have a good conversational skills, because most women like they want to test for congruency. They want like I can show pictures of myself online, or you could look really, really good, like this buffed out guy. But if you talk like with a lisp and you seem very effeminate and stuff like that, you're kind of blowing the perception of the image that you're broadcasting to that woman. And that's really what women are looking for. What gives women the creep vibes is inconsistency and incongruency in how you project yourself with how you talk and how you act and how your conversation, your social skills, right? I think women are more fearful, not so much of a guy who's like, big and imposing, as they are of a guy who's just sort of like, there's something off about this guy. And it triggers this sort of instinctual evolutionary, women will call it an ick, but it's really kind of like the warning signals go off in your mind when you like are walking by a homeless person and he's shouting at the sky or something like that. You are instinctively want to get away from that guy. Now think about that in like levels of nuance and subtlety, right? And so women are testing for whether or not you're congruent with the way they present yourself. Like, are you really the guy that you really are? And there's only one way to really get around certain deficits. Like, remember what we were talking about the height factor?
Yeah.
Like my buddy Jake, again, 5'6", 5'7", something like that. If he was just using apps, if he was just using dating apps, he'd be screwed. He would never be able to meet nearly he would never be as successful with women as he is as a result of that. But because he's in the clubs, he's a drummer, he's a musician, he meets people, he's very social, he has a good attitude about things. He doesn't take rejection personally. He's going to be at a much better advantage in a situation where it's live in real time. And I think most guys, if you get used to it, you'll find that your success rates are going to go up. Same thing with women. I think women need to meet guys live in real time so that they can be a better, like the guys that they would be attracted to and want to get with online. They might not consider those dudes if they just saw the pictures of them, that guy that they met in the club who really impressed them and really kind of turned them on, just as a result of sort of being there and being proactive about it. And, I'm not saying that looks aren't a matter, aren't a factor. They are, but it's much better to evaluate a person's looks live in real time when they're right in front of you than it is to like look at some curated picture too. So I think that's starting to become a little bit more popular. So as far as like meeting people and dating, I would say that's probably my number one like advice.
Yes.
Guys need to. I think one of the biggest problems that guys have with dating right now is they just need to go out and do it. They need to take action instead of like staring at their navel and trying to explain why they, come up with all these rationales as to why they're going to be unsuccessful. Right. Guys need to go out and do stuff and take action. I hear a lot about like inner game and all this other bullshit. You got to get your inner game right before you go out. No, you don't. Go out. If you're successful out there, there's nothing that's going to cure your inner game problems like having a really hot chick be that into you. And suddenly that success and all that stuff that goes along with, once you get that success and you're out there doing it, even if you're not successful and you still have a good time, you're still out doing something, and you're creating this positive feedback loop that you'll never do if you're just sitting at home on scrolling and doing all this other bullshit.
Yeah.
The other thing I say for women is get out there, and the guys that you would not necessarily think would be somebody that you would necessarily hook up with at first might be somebody that you would want to get involved with later on. Because I've met countless girls on Access Vegas who've told me that, like, I didn't really like him at first, but then like we got together for a second date or a third date, and then I really, really liked him after that.
Yeah.
One of the things. So like I've said this is that, and this was advice for guys, but it kind of like works for chicks too, is like when I tell guys, like if they're at the clubs or something and they meet a girl and she seems really, really into them, like there's this concept called hesitate and thou art lost. Like you have to like strike while the iron's hot, right? Always default to action. Go, go, go. Right. Because the woman that you meet at the clubs is not going to be the same woman that you see at Starbucks for coffee the next day. Right. She might have been really into you because of the lights and the music and the situation and the environment and all the conditions that were led up to that sort of like that meetup. And all of that's gone when you're having, sucking down a macchiato or whatever the fuck you drink, right? And so the same thing you can say for women as well. Like maybe there's a guy that you kind of liked a little bit, but you weren't too sure of him, and then you see him again later, and you give him a half a chance, and you go, man, this guy's really hot. I really laughed, but I didn't realize, like I didn't see him in this light because we were at a club, and now we're in broad daylight or something like that, and I really like him that much more. You all this shit about like, oh, perfection and everything. Women are never going to get absolute perfect, but I'll leave you with this: is that you don't. There's no such thing as a turnkey relationship. You build a relationship, and you just find one. Right? There's not just like I'm just going to walk into this perfect relationship. You build one. You make a perfect relationship, and I can say that after 29, 30 years of marriage. Right now, I have a shared history with my wife that is like irreplaceable. And so I have a good relationship with my wife because we built it up over the course of years. And I think that that's something that sort of starts with women going, like having, thinking about it over the course of time rather than just like blowing them off out of hand. So.
Yeah. And would you also agree too, Rollo, thanks to the Me Too movement, a lot of dudes are scared shitless to approach women. And I can remember, I think it might have been Chris Williams, and I can't remember, but back in the olden days, women used to drop a handkerchief and that was cue to go up and talk to him. Yeah, because guys, you kind of have to dumb it down a little bit. Like one glance isn't going to fucking cut it. Maybe just be a little bit more inviting. Would you agree? Maybe women need to sort of.
Yeah, well, you don't have to beat them over the head with it, but like, you got to remember, like, men and women like communicate differently. So if a guy doesn't like, how come he doesn't get it? Like that's half the reason why like women like blow off guys is because they're guys that just don't get it. Right? They don't understand that they're being flirted with. Because most guys aren't used to success. They're used to failure, right? So they're analyzing failures. And I've told guys this too, is like plan ahead, plan for success. Like if you're going to ask a chick out, have a plan. Like, okay, we're going to go do this, and we're going to go rock climbing. We're going to go, base jumping, whatever. I don't know, whatever the fuck it is. Like, find something to have a plan already ready to go. So you plan ahead for success, because there's nothing worse than asking some girl out and like, well, what are you going to do? Oh, I don't know. You want to go coffee? Like fuck that. No, you have to have like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. We're going to go do this. Here's at this time, at this day, whatever. But like most guys don't. That's why they need mentors. That's why they need guys to help them like understand those things and to be able to be sensitive to like when a woman is showing them indicators of interest, like IOIs, right? Because if you're not used to that, and I deal with this with the guys in the Reignite program because they've been married for like sometimes 20, 25 years. And what worked for them 25 years ago to get with the girl that is now their ex-wife, all the shit that they think will work from back then is like completely out the window, right? They don't understand. So they have to have those conversations. They have to do it live in real time. They have to be able to, read innuendos and read a woman's body language. And a lot of guys simply don't have the patience or they don't believe they should have to, right? But you got to bust yourself down and go, okay, I'm going to learn. I'm going to figure this shit out. And once you do, you'll figure it out. But yeah, the dropping of the handkerchief thing. I mean, there's digital ways of doing that right now. It's like, hey, follow the trail here, dummy. Yeah, I can understand why there's like that. Like women like the chase. They want to. And the reason they do is because they want a guy who just gets it. They want a guy who can play with her and play with her. Right. They don't want him to break character. Right. They don't want him to have to, like, women like to play the game. They don't like to talk about about the game itself. They don't want to be told that they're playing a game. They would rather be with the superior player of the game. And that guy figures it out when she drops the handkerchief, in a manner of speaking. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And what have you got coming up, Rollo? Have you got any particular events, anything like that?
I've got, well, of course, the 6th book is going to drop in October. So that's my big announcement right now.
That's exciting.
Wow. The Reignite book will be coming out in October. And then I have an event here in Las Vegas that's going to be going on October 29th, the 30th, and the 31st. And that will be at Tao Nightclub for Halloween, and it will be my Reignite group. And so you can, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll get all the links for it. All of the information you'll find about my Reignite group can be found on Instagram. Or you can simply just go to reignitealpha.com, and then you can check out what the program's really all about. And then, but again, we do meetups, and the meetups, you don't have to be a member of Reignite to join. I mean, we'll charge you for it. It's like, I think it's usually like $800, $900 for depending on the weekend, right? But you don't have to be part of the group to do that. You can just check it out by going to an event, and then if you decide that you want to join, then you can. So the events are kind of mutually exclusive from membership, and we do that on purpose because we just like to have a lot of guys go and have fun, have a good time. And that's what I usually focus my events on is like, I mean, there's learning and but I try to keep the classroom setting thing to a minimum. I would much rather go to the gun range and have conversations with guys, or go deep sea fishing, or go, ride quads, or drive cars, or go play top golf, whatever it is, because I think that's where the real conversations and the real connections make between guys is when we have some mutually shared experience, and that's and it makes it fun. I don't want to sit in a classroom all day.
And it's fun too.
Yeah, it's fun. So I try to make sure that that's the first thing. I want everybody to have a good time. So
yeah.
And then we go to things like Babes in Toyland. We got a Babes in Toyland event coming up at the Mondrian in Los Angeles, and those are our charity events that me and Mike do. And sometimes we plan events around them. Like the last one we did was in August for the Swim Week. Babes in Toyland, and I try to look for occasions where I can take my guys and I can put them into social situations where they're going to meet good-looking women, and there's no better place for that than Las Vegas.
Yes. Yeah. And do you think down the track, Rollo, there might be the possibility of coming to Australia and maybe doing a podcast with Myron and Fresh, like Access Vegas in Australia? Would that ever be a possibility?
I would love to. Yeah, if I can get some people to set it up for me, I would love to. I know Sterling Cooper will probably be in on that too. I mean, there's a lot of people that would probably want to do that. Yeah, I'm definitely open. I'm always open to travel. I got people in Kenya that want me to come and do stuff out there.
Wow. In
Yeah.
Kenya?
Kenya and Turkey are the places that really want me to come visit. So
My goodness.
maybe in 2026, we'll see.
Exciting, Rollo. And where can people find you, Rollo? So Instagram and
Find me. You could just find me at rational_male on Instagram, or just look up Rollo Tomassi. You'll find me on there. And then on Twitter, I'm really active on Twitter. I am Rollo Tomassi at Rational Male. And then, of course, therationalmale.com is my blog. And then my YouTube channel, which is The Rational Male, and then Access Vegas. So those where you can find me.
amazing, Rollo. Rollo, an honor to sit down and chat with you.
Sure.
I mean, I could talk to you for hours. You're very interesting, fascinating, and I really like what you're doing with the work that you're doing. And you really are like. And this is people, they don't really see what's happening behind scenes. You really are helping a lot of young men, and this is what they need right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be more than just a podcaster and an author. Like, I want to be able to, like, boots on the ground. I wanted to be able to. That's why I started the group, was because I wanted to do something more than just like talk about stuff. I want to raise awareness. I want to do more than just raise awareness. I actually want to institute, like, groups that will help guys, until one, guys initiate change in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it's all about, Rollo, changing lives. It's amazing. You're doing some amazing things. Rollo, thank you so much for your time.
You got it. Anytime, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Rollo.